flying through the Milky Way. Nonetheless, you are on some gift ass drug. One always blows out, oceans can't curve around a ball. Stars always stay on the same course year after year.
Einstein was a turd.
Hawking is a fraud. NASA is a hoax. Coriolis is a bunch of gold.
Okay, we are live. 8/8/2024. Anniversary of the uncharacteristically destructive fires in Maui. And shout out to the fake dead kids who weren't incinerated. To the total of 1,500. Do you remember all the truthers running around crying about the Maui kids who got lasered? Like, why isn't anybody talking about the 1,500 kids who were lasered to death? It's because they don't exist. But you had these truthers running around. It's like, if you're not talking about this, then you don't care about these kids. And that's when I coined the phrase, fake dead kids' lives don't matter. And as soon as I started pushing back with that, suddenly they stopped talking about that. And here's the anniversary, and I don't see any truthers who were so caught up in the story last year, setting up any memorials or uploading any videos. No remembrances, nothing. And that's because whatever happened was a closed movie set. It wasn't climate change. It wasn't direct energy weapons. It was a psyop. And we already had our Maui repeat this year with Jasper. And Jasper apparently burned down, and that has been blamed on conservatives. And like with Maui, you had a bunch of secondhand witnesses talking about how terrible it was and comparing it to Maui. And by the way, Maui also has the, when we're talking about the fires, it had presiding over it the same police chief who was presiding over the Vegas hoax, which is relevant to our conversation today because I've been getting into a bit of a Twitter fight with a number of Las Vegas hoaxers. And it's realized to me, this thing is like, the Sandy Hook thing is definitely a left-wing psyop. But the Vegas shooting has been turned into a right-wing cause. So these are partisan shootings. And it makes sense considering they shot up a country music concert. James Aldean, who was 33 at the time, presided over this psyop. And it was targeting the right wing. It's like, hey, look, country music people, you like guns, and guns can come after you too. It's not just going after school children. So it was no longer a problem they could conveniently ignore. But I was going through this thread on X where people are saying, yeah, there were real people who died. And I really was kind of challenging people. Who? Names. And I couldn't get any names because people lie. And so we'll go over that. Today is also the Lionsgate portal. So if you look up, you may see it. This physically occurs when the sun in Leo aligns with the dog star Sirius. This alignment happens during Leo from July 28th to August 12th usually, but the peak time for the portal is 8/8, which is considered to be the most powerful day. So watch out for direct energy weapons from the dog star. Lionsgate portal, I have an article here about how you can manifest things, but the only reason I'm bringing this up is that Donnie Darko, not only does it have predictive programming for Donald Trump, but it was all about this portal and the corona, but it constantly had time travel and portals being a huge part of it. And of course the number 88, today's 8/8, and the number 88 is throughout Donnie Darko, takes place in 1988, and among other things. So there's that. We're also going to talk about, let's talk about the Vegas thing. That's going to be big. But I came across something else last night. We're looking into the Donald Trump psyop, the AR-15 ear-piercing psyop, and I realized something here. Because one of the incidents, and we have so many examples of predictive programming, but one instance of predictive programming is from The Boys, Season 4, Episode 8, the season finale called Assassination Run. And the thumbnail for that episode has the Homelander with blood on his face. Homelander represents Trump. So you have this finale, Season 4, Episode 8. And I was reminded of Stranger Things. I came across this tweet which said, Stranger Things is based upon the Montauk Project, a conspiracy that involved the kidnapping of orphans who were subjected to physical and psychological torture to research the possibility of time travel, mind control, and teleportation. So, time travel, interesting thread here. But the thing about this Stranger Things, and what caught my attention, is that the Brenner, who's like the villain, the mind control mad scientist, well, he's played by Matthew Modine, and Matthew Modine plays Joker in Full Metal Jacket, another Kubrick film. Well, Joker represents JFK. If you go back into the subtext of the movie Full Metal Jacket, you'll see all these references, but the connection here is Matthew Modine playing JFK in the subtextual kind of way. But then I came across this. So I'm looking up some facets about Stranger Things and the Montauk Project, and I came across this. Stranger Things has a helicopter sniper who shoots the Matthew Modine character. Season 4, Episode 8. So just to reiterate here, 4-8, the boys. 4-8, Stranger Things. The JFK slash Trump character getting sniped. Repeated theme. And this is from a couple of years ago. And there's more aspects to it. But someone had remarked on the type of weapon. And yeah, Stranger Things, Sniper, Season 4, Episode 8. Just like Homelander, Season 4, 8. And so again, 4884, this has been one of the repeated codes that we've seen throughout this entire thing. And what's more, on Stranger Things, the episode where this character gets shot is the 33rd overall. So Season 4, Episode 8, 33. So then I dug into the script because I seem to recall, and I don't have my Netflix account up, so I'm not rewatching this stuff, but I remember in my notes that the place where he gets shot was near the longitude, I think the longitude, because they had the coordinates were announced. And they're like, go meet us at longitude 116 and then something else. So I couldn't find it on the clips, but I went into the script and I found it here. Longitude is 116 degrees. And so the 116 thing has been consistently associated with this entire psyop we've been talking about for a long time. You know, him being shot at 6'11 would be relevant here. But again, he plays Joker with the target on the side of his head. And this is what had me pointing out that the 45-47 on the side of Trump's head would be the location of the shooting. Which it was. You know, when he turned his head, but that's where it was aimed. Just a couple of things to add to the overall picture. The predictive programming is revealed not just in the content, but oftentimes in the season numbers. Another good example of this, Colony. Season 3, Episode 11, Seattle, Ground Zero for the reboot of civilization. About this alien takeover. You never see the aliens, but the governments have just basically kowtowed to them, and everyone has to fall under this new authoritarian control structure, and it's a reset, like a great reset, but they call it the reboot of civilization, and it kicks off at Ground Zero for the pandemic Seattle. And this was again Colony, Season 3, Episode 11, long before the 311 that we're referencing. We'll give a few more minutes for people to show up. I see about 60 so far. So I Heart Mindy. I Heart Mindy is likely a Fed, a plant, and one of her gigs for the longest time has been gatekeeping the Las Vegas Harvest Festival shooting and maintaining this as a right-wing cause. You know how the left wing has made martyrs out of the school children? Well, the right wing has made martyrs out of the Vegas shooting. And this was one of the early schisms we experienced in Trutherville when this event happened, when we skeptics said it's fake. A lot of the newly minted QAnoners, they just started drinking the Kool-Aid. They said, nope, Q said the deep state did it to make Trump look bad, and several other things. And I'm like, wait a minute. All of a sudden, you're going to reject skepticism and follow Q? And they were like, yes. And we lost a large number of people, and a lot of them never came back. I've checked up on some of these people. So this matters. If your operating system is corrupt, if you've got malware in your mind, it doesn't just influence little things. You have to think long term in the aggregate. It's going to possibly steer you to an entirely different place than you would have arrived at otherwise. These guardrails are there to steer you. And a lot of the people who left our server and went with Team Q became full-blown MAGA cultists who are terrified of 5G towers. They're basically drinking all the Kool-Aid and they never stopped. But those of us who held our ground and maintained skepticism avoided all that. I was never even tempted to pick up a Q pipe. But anyway, 10/1/2017 Harvest Festival Vegas shooting, presided over by the same police chief who presided over the Maui hoax. This is the largest mass shooting in American history. More predictive programming can be found in The Hangover, as someone mentioned recently. But what I want to focus on is this. 50 of the people who were shot at again at a follow-up country music concert. And there were anomalies galore. It's safe to say it was fake without going into the details. But my point is, I asked I Heart Mindy, and of course she blocked me. I'm not surprised. In fact, let me see if I can't pull up that tweet. I was blocked, but here's what this is why I screen capture. She said, "This man is talking about here who had the motive and the means to slaughter us like cattle during the Vegas shooting. He went to every gun convention collecting." This is Mindy Robinson, who made a documentary about Vegas, and she's talking about this individual here who's describing how people were rounded up like cattle and massacred and how it's going to happen again. And I said to her, nobody died on 10/1. Why don't you ever talk about the overlap between the Vegas shooting victims and the borderline bar and grill shooting? It's highly questionable. Can you address this? And she wouldn't address it, and I didn't think she would. But in the comments, I was harangued by a lot of her trolls. And so Craig Janish says, "Are you saying nobody died at the Vegas shooting?" And I said, "Yeah, nobody. It was a psyop." And then Craig says, "Sorry, buddy. My best friend's brother's buddy died." Okay. Again, it's like I know somebody who's related to somebody whose friend lived close by someone whose dog walker is related to the person who's the victim of that story that you're denying. How dare you? I'm like, sorry, no 6 degrees of separation here. You're basically sort of you're like a remote crisis actor. He said, "I've also had multiple friends I've known since grade school at the concert." And I said, "Okay, crisis actor, lie for the PSYOP entertainment complex." To which he calls me a clown. The next person says to me, "These people don't care if people die. It's a false flag and actual victims don't matter to them. They will kill real people. That's how it goes." And I said, that's not an argument, that's a appeal to motive fallacy. Auto hoax or GTFO. The next person goes on to say, "My old neighbor went to the concert and shielded her daughter, giving her own life to protect her. You're wrong." And, I just said, crisis actor, you're deceived. And I'm finding a lot of people jumping in on this thread. Anyway, moving on, KF says, "I went to high school with one of the victims. I assure you he's dead. So sad. They don't care about the innocents." People did die. If you're saying no one died, you should have your teeth knocked out. Now, the visibility on that post is limited because I flagged it. And I said, you're just mad because you're brainwashed. So it doesn't really go that far, but people are very defensive over these martyr tales, but they're very dismissive of the other sides. You think any of these people care about Sandy Hook? Nope. These are partisan psyops. That's how you know they're fake. Let me go through your comments. Again, we just reached about 75. Today's 8/8/2024, joined by Thirst for Truth, Osher, Frank, Cubstar, Green Smoke, Let's Go, Nat Cole, Ted Striker. Phones are open, by the way. Lord Laney says, "Maui dew lasers zapped all the missing children. Whole thing wrapped itself up." Yeah, it was just there one day and gone the next. Just poof, they're gone. And afterward, they sprayed the soil with pink soil tackifier. Yep, the area where it got zapped was turned pink. Just one example of the weird pinkness that has really typified the last year of PSYOPs, from the sky turning pink, the pink painting of King Charles. It all started with Barbie, and the color symbolism is worth looking into separately from everything else, because it's there. Madoo lasers, Madoo kids. I think it's funny, because it used to be the trend where truthers would mourn over victims, but they would blame the other side. And they both do it. So the mainstreamers are like, oh, these poor victims of these climate change fires. Shame on you, Republicans. I even heard a podcaster, I think her name is Molly. I see if I can find it. She's somewhat annoying, so it's probably good I don't remember her name. I only heard a few. I heard her on this day. She was talking about how she felt guilty. Oh, Molly Jongfast. Yeah, Molly Jongfast with Fast Politics. She actually felt guilty for her role in the Maui fires because she believes that driving around, she has somehow added to it. So it's climate change, basically. But then the right wing is like, no, it's a secret government project. It's not climate change because there's no such thing. That's ridiculous. So it's a partisan psyop. Again, you shouldn't be falling for those. Joined by HLG, Evolvement, Frank Murr, Matt X, Flozik, thank you for joining. 505-510-4226 if you want to call in. Mango says, Dark Matter Digital Network has been on TuneIn for how long now? I think Dark Matter has been on TuneIn since Art Bell started it. And Dark Matter went under and will probably never resurface. I'm not sure. I haven't really looked into it. Oh, Breck says, the director of Hangover also directed Joker? Are you kidding me? Now, there are some connections there worth looking at. Director of Hangover and director of Joker. Todd Phillips. Okay, fascinating. I had no idea. Joker is a 2019 American psychological thriller directed and co-produced by Todd Phillips. Okay, and the Hangover films. Metascriptor identified. You see, it's not the demiurge. You look under the rocks, you dig far enough. It's not a supercomputer. It's not aliens. It's not the devil. There are human beings who are engineering these reality-bending scripts, the overlapping, the synchronized entertainment with future news. The mind entrainment process is deliberate, and the individuals who are the architects of it are easy to identify. You just got to find the little clues. You can find the overlaps, and we've identified a few. In fact, we need to go ahead and move forward with some cyber symposiums. I'm trying to figure out a way to make it happen, and it may just have to go with a Zoom conference, because we could spend hours going after or going through a list of scripts, directors, and the relevant psyops and how they relate, and we can show you the correlation between the directors, the writers, the political messaging, the news of the time. I think we would talk about probably Jordan Peele, Todd Phillips, of course, James Cameron, and obviously Kubrick, the Nolan brothers, both of them definitely worth examining in this context. I'd like to bring up Francis Ford Coppola, likely. Then also, there's some novelists and some video games have come from novels like Tom Clancy that we should probably also include in this. But we need to do a total just breakdown of all the different scripters that we have analyzed. Joined by Cardone says, no way they can be that smart. Okay, see, that's the divine fallacy, and that's a guardrail. That has been a guardrail that has helped to and here's why we have to speak it. We have to be critical of these things. If you're going to stand by the guardrails that say the mind isn't capable of this is beyond man, and therefore all that is known about this, all that's available is all that there is. There's nothing else to know. Like, you can go just end your curiosity there. Like, well, the demiurge did it. Engineered these weird coincidences between the movies and the news. That explanation eliminates the possibility that man is manipulating man. And hasn't that been one of the common features of civilization? Religions, priest classes, ignorant sheeple, knowledge disparities as a basis for power. Man manipulating man, lies, deception, the art of war. This is ancient. The idea that they can't be that smart, that's what they want you to think. They want you to think, you know what? There's no way that man could be manipulating man with fakery and mind control on this level. It must be aliens. There's no way that man could hack computers. Must be gremlins. Hackers would love that. The metascriptors have been hidden behind synchromystic fog between explanations, or rather arguments, that say that man is incapable, therefore a supercomputer must have done this. Nope, nope, nope. We have moved past those faulty explanations, which are the result of a lack of info. Infinite Plane Radio. Hey, caller. Can
Sir,
you?
yes, sir. See, this is like the purpose of the group, really, because this is where we get to hash out our ideas, right? See, if we would just automatically resort to the demiurge or the devil did it, it lets them off the hook. Matter of fact, it's probably the purpose of them releasing all this. Man, I love it. It's
Yes.
entertaining as fuck. The demiurge, that's why they do it, because it lets them off the hook. It's not their fault. They were programmed by the demiurge. That's why they stuck them in the freaking boxcars and freaking stuck them in incinerators, right? The demiurge made them do it, or the devil made them do it.
Well,
No.
do you remember the movie The Village? The children are in the village growing up, and they're mind controlled because the parents tell them there are monsters in the woods, and they dress up as the monsters. And I think that the controllers would divert the blame to non-existent entities like archons, so you don't think too hard about the news and how it relates
Man,
to the
it sure is
propaganda.
fun though, right? Though, but you got to admit, it is fun to like think about all that weird stuff, like demiurges or demons or whatever. That like that there's some mystery behind it all, like these interdimensional beings or whatever.
I'm interested in
I
the
can't
truth.
believe that human beings are. I can't believe that human beings are the highest form of intelligence in the universe. Now, I don't believe in the cosmic geography that they give us, the layout of the universe. I don't believe in any of that at all. But I don't believe that human beings. It's just a belief. There's no way we could possibly know. If we're going off of what we know, that human beings are the most intelligent thing in the universe, or ever has ever existed. There's no evidence for
Well,
anything other than
hold on a
that.
second though.
But
Are you assuming though that you have encountered the most intelligent people on Earth? That you even know what that means? Because
that have ever existed.
what I'm suggesting is that it's like Plato's Republic. You have the philosopher kings, a completely separate group who aren't given all this malware in their minds from the early ages. Like, I think you might be underestimating the ingenuity of man, and I think that they've dumbed down mankind visually so we can't tell
So
real from fake.
how could these people be? They're not. I don't think Donald Trump's that good of an actor. No, I've already admitted that I like the Donald
Wait,
Trump
hold on a second.
character.
Hold on.
Mm-hmm.
You're saying a guy whose TV show won multiple awards, had 13 seasons as a top show. You saying
Not
he's
an
not?
actor.
You're saying he's not a good actor?
Nope. He's under hypnosis. That's the only thing that makes sense to me. Because to
Okay,
me,
wait,
like, I can
hypnosis.
spot a bullshitter and an actor, and like he doesn't seem to be pretending. I think he really believes. Not just him, but most people in government seem to believe in what they're saying. I don't think that they're pretending. I could tell, like by like when they squint, unless really everybody on TV is just an actor, like high, like they're so good they can
It
fake being
doesn't. It
stupid.
doesn't have to be everybody. Now he could be insulated, and that's a strong possibility. Like I know a lot of the people in Trutherville, like a lot of these gatekeepers are literally insulated. Like I don't think Stu Peters, for example, who's got millions of followers, big mouth on the far right. I don't think he has a clue what it means that nobody died in Vegas. I don't think he can compute that. They're still stuck with the Jews did it all, and they can't let go of that red herring, that stinking red herring. They just chase it all the time, and they miss the forest of fakery for the trees. And that's insulation. They don't need to be in the know because they're lying to themselves every day. They're caught up in this groove. And Trump is probably insulated. He probably doesn't even know space is fake. When he's talking to the astronauts on the screen, he probably believes it. And it's probably for national security. That movie Fly Me to the Moon made this point. President Nixon didn't know that they were faking the moon landing. It was above him.
Do you think that there could be like a combination of like some kind of like, I don't know, MK Ultra type mass hypnosis going on, where some people are just like following orders and they're not reciting lines? Like it's like it could be
No.
It could be just like no.
No.
Really,
I've come across
they're
this.
faking it.
I have a theory about this actually. I was just talking to a friend about this. That the MK Ultra narrative is you've got controllers or programmers, and then you got these mind-controlled individuals who have multiple personalities, and one alter takes over, so they don't even know. And I'm saying, no, that's a cover story to cover the fact that these are actors. So the MK Ultra narrative with the handler and the program slave might just be a cover story for directors and actors. We're looking at actors. That's the common cause, and we can prove it time and again. So I don't think we need to rule in the possibility for anything additional to that.
You know how we keep like resorting to like loosh and like what is their goal? It's probably some kind of like demonic energy that feeds them. What if it was just like good old class? If they're getting rich off of negative energy, like what if it's it's not loosh? I mean, I love the idea of it, man. It's interesting as fuck. But what if it's just like the more click, like it has to do with clicks, right? Like negative vibes produce more dollars. So that's why they put out so much negative shit, because somebody's getting rich off of you being afraid. They're going to find out what you're afraid of through some kind of weird algorithm, and they're going to pump you in, and you're going to like spend money on shit that you don't really need. You're going to panic buy bullets, popcorn, whatever.
Sure.
And
There's
that's the purpose of it all. It's
well,
money. It's a way to generate value.
well, no. What we're looking at too is the fact that they're using all the techniques of modern marketing to serve us propaganda 24/7, and the fear of fear of losing out, FOMO, fear of missing out is huge. Scarcity. So they play upon fears as motivations for some people who don't respond to incentives. So if you're not driven by incentives, you might be driven by fear. But I think ultimately what we're seeing with the media, it's part of the entrainment. So they synchronize your subconscious with the entertainment, with the future news. But I think similarly, they are, I think that they're, I guess the best way to explain it is that they're applying intermittent reward. So it's fear, pleasure, because that creates a trauma bond that they can sustain indefinitely. That's why people don't leave toxic relationships. They're trauma bonded. And I think humanity has a trauma bond with mass media and religion for that matter.
Wow. Man, I have no idea what comes next, but I refuse to panic or be afraid or let them get to me. Like people, I could see everybody panic around me, and they're like, "Aren't you worried?" I'm like, I just look them right in the face. I'm like, "Nah, I don't really care." And there's nothing to worry about. And in the end, okay, like, look, I'm anything but a liberal, but really in the last year I've made more money. Like they'll tell you that the economy is crashing. I'm not sticking up for Joe Biden, not in any way. But I really did make a lot of money. So like it seems like things did get better a little bit. Like things are moving forward. Maybe when we went back a little bit, but it's not the worst that things have ever been right now. There've been worse times. I remember 2008. That was a scary time. Things right now aren't that bad, and I'm sure they'll get better again.
That's a good point.
They,
I think one of the
they can
reasons
only
why.
build so many houses. Like I work in construction, right? It goes in phases, and I'm in Florida. Like people have been moving here, taking their money, coming to this state, like their entire life savings. They come here and they buy a condo, and they try to stretch their dollars as long as possible. And I've been here for 20 years, and I've seen it go through cycles. There's times where there's nothing going on, and you have to go learn how to fix things. You become a service tech. And then there's times when construction's popping off, and that's when you go build houses. So right now, we just experienced like a peak like a year and a half ago was the peak.
Well, let me get you to
And
respond.
it's starting to dip.
Kevin Mooring
But
says.
like I think it'll get better again.
Kevin Mooring says the world is crumbling. It's not fine. How do you respond to that?
I don't know. Like, I mean, I personally believe that somebody is making money off of your fear. So if everything you see on TV is negative, like how would you really know that it's negative other than mass media?
You know,
Sure, granted,
okay,
there's
money,
people dying
money.
of drugs. There were people dying of drugs and AIDS and crack in the 80s. Like when we were little kids, it was bad then. There were gang wars. Like there was like Bloods and Crips killing each other.
Let
Like,
me give you an example.
Now.
This is good. Here's good news. That's bad news. Okay, so people are living longer, so that's good news. But
You
then,
think so?
well, yeah, that's just a fact. I'm not. I guess say it. I'm gonna say it like it's a reported fact. Statistically speaking, people live longer now than they used to, and as a result, you have more examples of Alzheimer's. Yet, this good news of people living longer is attendant with old age related disease. But the truthers will say this is terrible news. The chemtrails are giving us Alzheimer's. So they're reaching these conclusions that are intrinsically negative and misplaced when they're seeing something that's actually a positive development, but they're ascribing to it that this is an evidence of a decline.
Why is it that the people that worry about chemtrails eat Twinkies? Like, you're worried about like possible fictitious chemicals in the air, but you're eating food like the ingredients are clearly on the box. These are the same people that chain smoke. I don't smoke. I have my card. I smoke a little weed, a little bit, but like I don't smoke tobacco. All right, like so the same.
Okay, wait.
people
Correct.
that will
I
tell
correct
you, like,
myself.
to
Hold
be
on.
afraid-
Hold on. I correct myself. Lifespan has shortened in America. That's a fact, says Rilo05. I don't even care to argue.
That's what I figured.
Look, I don't know. I don't even think that's true. I think it's probably longer. In fact, let me tell you.
That could be-
I honestly believe this. I honestly believe that Big Macs contain life extension, and that McDonald's has realized that they will get more money out of you long term by
My
prolonging.
mom chain smokes and she's
they-
outliving
yeah.
everybody. I
Yeah.
thought she was going to die 20 years ago. I wrote her up years ago, and she's outliving everybody. And this lady smokes like 3 packs a day.
Yep.
She's never going to die.
Well,
They're putting preservatives in there.
That's the incentive. The incentive is you get your customers to live longer. There's no incentive to kill your customers anywhere. But look, I don't care about these people alleging facts authoritatively because it's like choose your own apocalypse. If you're a liberal leftist, there's too many people. If you're right-winging alt-right conspiracy theorist, we're running out of people. We're all dying.
There's not enough people.
So what is it? It's one or the other. And it's like, I don't think either of you are correct. I think you're both emotional. And that's where they want you. Emotional, subjective, confused, scared, and lost.
I guess you just have to like find a way to be happy with whatever you're doing, wherever we're at in the world. Like, and unless you like look out the window and you see a big fireball flash in the sky, it's not the end of the world, right? Like, there's another day. It's not worth freaking out about, because ultimately you're going to go out and panic buy. You're going to spend money on something that you really don't need, and that's what I think it's really all for. Is if you're a lefty, they're going to send you shit to be afraid of. And you're going to go out and buy liberal bullshit, whatever it's hand sanitizer, face masks.
So, right now there are
you're
a lot of
buy guns,
there are
or
people
bullets, or
who are investing very heavily right now into fortresses, and they're not telling where, but billionaires are buying fortresses like they used to buy bunkers, and so there's huge money in it, and I think there's a black market for tickets to Mars that nobody knows about, that only the ultra-rich have access to. They think they're going to get away from this place.
How about this? Have you ever thought about like the different versions? Now, see, I've never read the book. I only know the movies. I've seen the original 90s version. This is like when CGI, when I first really noticed CGI. It was probably The Abyss and then Total Recall. Total Recall is what I'm talking about. There's 2 different versions. There's the original version where he goes to Mars and outer space with spaceships. And in the remake with Colin Farrell, the Irish guy, it's all about going to like Australia through a tunnel that goes through the core of the Earth.
Wait, what is this called? Wait, hold on. What is this called again?
Total Recall.
Really? Okay, I got to rewatch this. There's a tunnel.
In the remake, they don't go to Mars. It's all about like imagine like that we have like this abundant workforce in North America, and all the factories are in Australia, and nobody lives there. There's just a bunch of robot factories. So every day, all these people take a tunnel right through the core of the Earth and end up in Australia. So I started thinking about it. I was like, what if like these 2 stories, if you put them together, they're really just telling us that you could get to Mars through a tunnel. If you add story A to story B, you can get to Mars through a tunnel.
Wow.
Rewatch the remake of, matter of fact, just watch them back to back. Watch Total Recall 1 and Total Recall the remake, and see how like the 2 stories kind of like work together in a way. Now, I don't know, maybe the original story was about Mars, or the original story was just about taking a tunnel through the Earth, but
you know what? You may be onto something here. They may have revealed this. I'm going to have to rewatch it with new eyes, because now that I think about it, I just recall tunnels and tunnels and tunnels. And here you have it.
Like Elon Musk,
yes,
with the freaking the under the Boeing company. Like, yeah, they're like in the future, Elon Musk is going to run the tunnels that take you to Mars.
Great find. It says, unlike the original, this is set in a dystopian Earth, not Mars. Okay, so this is on my to watch list. I'm going to watch this one because this could be a big reveal. Excellent find. And this is, by the way, Total Recall. I think it's based on a Philip K. Dick story.
Philip K. Dick, yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah, Total
All
Recall.
right, brother.
Okay,
That's all I got for today.
well, that's quite a lot. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a great
You
day.
take care, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay, now that is a good piece of information. Total Recall 2012 takes place on Earth with some kind of a tunnel, and I've been suggesting that Mars is going to be a place on Earth arrived at by tunnel through a simulated wormhole, simulated celestial autobahn, but ultimately you're just in a tunnel, like Space Mountain Disneyland. But instead of ending up in Disneyland, you end up in Disney Mars, and it would be a totally enclosed ecosystem. You would never know the difference. And we live in the Disney universe on Planet Netflix, and they can simulate anything. They just have to make sure that everyone's programmed enough to accept these false models. You have to kind of be brainwashed appropriately. Obreek says, Westworld quote, some people choose to see the ugliness in the world, the disarray. I choose to see the beauty, to believe there is an order to our day and a purpose. Yeah, I try to avoid the purposefully injected pessimism. And if there's even a minute chance that your attitude in any way determines outcomes, if you're reaching for dystopian doomsday scenarios, you're being self-defeating. Ryler05 says the original is about going to Mars in virtual reality. The original is about how memory erased us about how there was a war on Mars. Yeah, I'll have to watch them both, especially because it's got the Terminator. And remember I mentioned the other day about Donald Trump, the Antichrist, Abaddon, the Angel, Apollyon, the Terminator, and how the Terminator's looking over the abyss in Revelation 9/11. Ground Zero 9/11, Arnie's face was on billboards for the movie Collateral Damage overlooking Ground Zero. You can see it in some of the footage with the plane hitting. There's the destroyer. There's the Terminator, or Abaddon, overlooking 9/11. And it's notable that that movie Collateral Damage was pulled because it had so many scenes reminiscent of 9/11. That's concurrent programming for you. And it was so ill-timed. Like it was actually a little late. If they had maybe released it a month earlier, we would have seen it in its original form. But since it hadn't made it to the theaters in time, we never got to see it as predictive programming. But that's what it was. Okay, let's move on here. I've bookmarked this. I'll check out the 2012 version of Total Recall. So I was talking about the conversation, this back and forth I've had with the Las Vegas gatekeepers, crisis actors, who are pushing back against my claims that nobody died. And for the most part, it comes down to ad hominem. Here's one. LVJ, I personally know a man who was shot and killed that night at the festival. He was the father of my daughter's best friend. Okay, father of my daughter's best friend. Okay. I said LOL, crisis actor, and he told me to go F myself, and I said, you're just triggered because you're lying and you have no evidence. Anyway, someone else says, I literally know people who died that day. Where did these people just come from? Where did these people just come from? All these survivors and people who know people who died at this one event are suddenly on this Twitter thread. I think that Mindy, the Fed, who put out this documentary, I think she brought out her troll army. I think that is what happened here. But we'll get back to this. I had this epiphany today. I realized, okay, Vegas is a right-wing cause. Sandy Hook is a left-wing cause. And so the Vegas cause isn't anti-gun, where it's anti-gun with Sandy Hook. So what's the Vegas cause? It's anti-deep state. It's the deep state going after Trump. It's fundamentally connected to the QAnon narrative. That's why so many people who are drinking the Kool-Aid fell for the Maui thing. Linda Curtis says, I like how Arnie's eyes bugged out before everything was all right. He couldn't breathe, LOL, from fear. Lord Laney says, that would make sense why they're acclimating all the kids with the bumpy amusement park rides at Disney World, prepare them for the journey to the great potato farm cave life. You have to add into this the video games, the Oculus. Because when you get to Mars, you will still have to terraform it. So you're not going to go to the surface. Your children's will. your children's kids, your great-grandchildren. You're going to be waiting generations. Like, how long is it going to take to turn the red skies blue? And how is it going to be done? Well, there are a few different ways that they have come up with. Michio Kaku suggested a giant mirror in space to reflect the sun and melt the North Pole and then flood the planet. Elon Musk had suggested nuking Mars's North Pole. Michio Kaku also suggested releasing cows for the methane and possibly resurrecting dinosaurs. But they have to make Mars Earth to make it habitable. It won't happen right away. So you're going to end up in some vault, some underground, deep underground Mars base. You're going to be sitting in a cubicle with a headset on, remotely working on the surface with some kind of robot. Terraforming. So you won't even be on the surface. They can totally get away with faking people out for 1, 2, 3 generations. Mars is going to be a Truman Show. And, I've been talking about the space communism angle, which really began with the Russian space program and Russian cosmism and the glorification of communism. But NASA did these posters a little while ago. It was Mars Wants You. And all of these images and posters they put out look like old communist propaganda. And at the time, I was kind of collecting these images of Russian space communism, communist bases on the moon, etc. But here's some examples. And what stands out to me is how now you're converted into a class of people. You're a worker, you're a teacher, you're a farmer. And when you're wearing the astronaut suit, you no longer have a face. It's just a blank screen, and everybody looks the same. But they're glorifying the workers, the miners, surveyors wanted. Work the night shift on Mars's moon. Mars explorers wanted. We need you. Nearest recruiting station. So again, Mars recruiting posters that look like Soviet space communist propaganda. And I'm not putting it down. If you're a communist, by all means, go to Mars. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, Infinite Plane, it's Andy. I talked to you the other week, the tow truck driver.
Oh, yes. Yes, how are you? Thank you for calling back.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, I just wanted to put this out there. In my opinion, a lot of these, I think it's a mixture of a lot of these big influencers in Trutherville, like Tim Pool and the likes. I think partially a lot of them are doing it for the money. I mean, they may know somewhat that it's just a bunch of nonsense, but they're definitely grifting for the money. They make bank off that. That's my opinion. I think there's a mixture of programmed grifters, and that's my opinion.
I think you're right. Recently, there was this spat and a split between Stu Peters and Lauren Witzke, and there was some kind of thing in their contract where the money wasn't being equally distributed for one of their crappy documentaries. And it just turns out that it was all about money. They're fighting over money.
Yeah.
And then Stu Peters comes out and he rips on her because her husband's not white enough and says bad things about the unborn child. Like, they just tear each other down over pennies. It's not about truth or principle.
Yeah, I think it's not like they're not like us. They're not auto hoaxers. They're not deprogrammed. But in reality, they got to know that this whole political theater is just a sham. From Hulk Hogan to the Trump shooting to a lot of it. I think deep down they know partially, but they're grifting. They're making bank. Like recently, I was listening to some more Trutherville, David Knight. I listen to Trutherville sometimes, and he was talking about some TikTok influencer who the guy's like made so much money he gifted Donald Trump like a new Cybertruck, and like had it all wrapped like with something about the shooting theme or something that I didn't get it. I
saw
the
that.
exact details.
He gave him some expensive watch. He gave him a Cybertruck that had a wrap
Yeah,
that Trump.
well,
Yep.
You get him right there. That's my point. Like a lot of people, like there's these lame channels like Midas Touch. That's the woke town side of it, and this guy's getting like high impact flicks. That's more Trutherville. He talks about it. This guy's getting like millions of views. He'll drop a video and get like 70,000 views in a few hours. Like he's one of the top YouTubers, and he's just some lame up there like, Donald Trump said this, and play the clip. And he plays a clip of Donald Trump. It's just the most retarded. Like, I don't see how people like this stuff, but they're all into it. They're into the cult of personality. They're into the grift.
Yes.
Like, they're into the two parts. And just, I think a lot of people on the streets, they are the program. They're the believers.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a mixture. It's a big whole concoction.
Well, I made this point to say recently that the programming class, which includes entertainers and all these alt-right and wokester influencers, there's an overlap. Most of them are still 99% inside of the box. Like they're still programmed. They're not entirely out of it, and their motivations are, hey, you're in on this little secret, you're a little bit of an insider, and you're making bank. That's a good position to have for someone like Tim Pool, who's been on the grift since Occupy Wall Street, where he plays into the political horseshoe, and there's a steady gig there. It's never going to end. You stay on this side, they stay on that side, maintain the perpetual war. It never ends.
Yeah, and they're no different, in my opinion, these Trutherville, like Tim Pool and them, and Louder with Crowder, name your Trutherville. They're no different from the talking heads on CNN, in my opinion.
That's the realization. That's the realization to make. That mainstream and alt media are the moral and intellectual equivalents. They deserve each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, like, how in-depth it is. Like, if Trutherville people, like, they're not totally in the know. But for all we know, like, you know, they get boosted, like, on YouTube. Like, they get, like, promoted. Like all these idiots, like just any one of them, Young Turks, Temple, the Hodge twins, like all these people.
Well,
like people just like, yeah.
Well, for me, the main thing now, because there's a closed system too. Like all the people who are in this area, they're kind of, they have this in-group preference. They're all in the know. They maintain the same orthodoxies. They don't challenge each other, and they're a unified front against the mainstream. But ultimately, they're all just voters. And I think it's important to break away from that. And that's what my objective is. I want to break away from Trutherville controlled opposition. It's just tired, it's worn out, and it's not going anywhere. And it's a big grift, and I'm tired of making money for them. Like, why do I want to spend my time and attention, my emotional currency, on these individuals who don't even auto-hoax the mainstream media or their own positions?
No, speaking of which, I wanted to bring this up to you. I'm sure you saw it. But, you know, supposedly, they just caught 2 suspects that were planning a terror attack at the Taylor Swift concert, right? You probably heard that?
Yes.
And I was reading the comments on the post on YouTube, and one of them said, you guys need to take this serious. Remember the Manchester Arena bombing. It's serious. And I'm thinking, yeah, there's a programmer. Totally believe that Hollywood production as well.
Interesting you bring that up, because there's a guy, his name is Richard Hall in the UK, who's been sued over this whole Manchester for calling it a hoax. So there's this big auto-hoaxer case right now about the Manchester event. And just for future reference, if ISIS attacks a Taylor Swift concert, it was a hoax. Just letting you know in advance.
I don't even believe ISIS. I think that's part of their Hollywood production. In my opinion. And I won't say the other Middle Eastern thing. I don't want to get your channel dinged. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we're all
Fake News Phil.
Yes.
Fake News Phil, what he talks about all the time. I'm not going to say it on your channel. But all that, too.
Hey, let me get your opinion, just as a media critic and someone who's examining the world stage from our perspective. What would you rather have happen? ISIS attacking a Taylor Swift concert, or the ISS falling on a Taylor Swift concert?
I'd totally take the ISS.
Same.
It'd be more interesting. I'm like waiting for I'm waiting for the whole alien psyop. Like, they need to make it more interesting. We need to see aliens attacking the city like an Independence Day. Like, come on, step up the game. They got to step up their Hollywood productions a little. They keep running the same old scripts, or however you want to say it.
Yeah.
It's just a repeat.
I know. I'm waiting for a plot twist. The Trump head wound was kind of a nothing. It wasn't all that impactful. Although, I am looking forward to whatever happens with the Boeing Starliner. They're stranded in space until February. They're stuck up there till next year.
Yeah, that's funny. David Knight was talking about that, but he was all like talking about it like it was like serious, like it was real. Like, give me a break. Like even if they say you could see the ISS. I know you did your little record the ISS thing lately, but I mean, it's not that big. If it was really up there, there was no way you'd be able to see it of this tiny little thing that high up. You can't even see like a jet airliner up like super high. Like, it's just a ridiculous notion that you'd be able to see it streaking across the sky.
Yeah, I think
It's not that big.
no doubt what you're saying makes perfect sense. And we're not even talking about something with its own light source that's meant to be seen. It's just supposed to be reflecting the sun. But the distances are insane. I mean, you can. You,
Yeah, it's supposed to be. I mean, it's supposed to be in low Earth orbit, right? Going, what is it, 14, 20,000? I don't know how many miles per hour they say it's orbiting, but I mean, that's up there. And I don't know. I've never looked into the dimensions of how big it is, but it's not that big. Like, it wouldn't be like not even the size of like, you know, I never looked at the dimensions, but it's not very big.
it's like a football field,
You
but it's
know?
mostly empty space. It's mostly empty
Yeah.
space, and it's 250, 300 miles up. Compare that to an airline you see
No
5 miles
way
up,
you see
and
that.
it's like no, it'd be so. But they say it's the third brightest object in space, and that's my main criticism of the people who present me videos, and they say it might be the ISS. It's like that looks like a plane. To be the ISS, it has to be the third brightest object in the night sky, and I haven't seen this supposed bright light yet. Still looking for it, but no one's seen it as far as I know. But to get to your
Yeah,
point, though, on this thing, the masses believe anything on hearsay. They have no reason to doubt
they
it.
do. They do. Like, people, like, I saw a bunch of Trump tards out on the corner the other day here in Temecula.
Oh, we
Like, they
prefer
had
we
their
prefer.
tent.
I don't mean to be politically correct, but Trumpanzees is the prefer.
Okay. We'll call them Trump hands. Yeah, they were out there with their flags. Like, people were honking. Like, man, it's like they believe. And I'm like, he's an actor. He's like part of a Hollywood production.
Yeah,
Like,
well,
that's my opinion.
we have some more stuff to go over regarding that event. Synchromorpheus found something very interesting because of the whole storylines. One of the reasons I call it fake is it just has these various narratives and scripts attached to it. But the Antichrist story about the beast with the six heads and one of the heads is wounded, you actually see this play out when all these agents are wrapped around him and they're marching as one, and you see this one bloody head saying fight, fight, fight. It might actually be modeled off of one of these old images of the beast from the sea. I'll bring it up here in a few minutes.
Yeah, that's the thing that don't make any sense. Like, I was talking about, I was bringing that up to you last week, is how they're able to synchronize all these little details with movies and games and all this. But then the actual event, they make it so ridiculous. Like, you had his medical examiner coming out and saying that he had a 2 centimeter size hole in his ear. But 2 weeks later, when he took the bandage off, like, he didn't even have a scab, not even a nick. It's like they got to know that people are going to pick up on that contradictory statement when you could visually see.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna hit you back
Okay.
up.
Sounds good.
I'm working.
Thank you.
I'm at work calling me, but good talking to you, man. You have a good rest of your day.
Likewise. Appreciate the call. Excellent call. And ever since that I've been psyop aware, every psyop has looked low budget. Everything has been underwhelming. Everything. And what I realize is that the low information believers don't require great special effects. They're like, it looks real. And they react emotionally. It doesn't even process through their minds. 737 says, I don't know who Taylor Swift is, but he sounds fast. Well, Taylor Swift ISS bombing suspect was pictured holding knives. Okay. And Incompletus says, Taylor Swift dance class for the UK Stockport knife incident sparked the riots. Fascinating connection here. And there's even more connection when you get into the symbolism of the knife in witchcraft, which has everything to do with Taylor Swift, who's obviously a witch, if you look at the significance that she places on the number 13 around all of her work. And the witches use the knife in their rituals for opening and closing their circles. for tracing pentagrams in the air like it's a symbol. It's a witchcraft symbol outside of that context. But the fact that a Taylor Swift dance party had the bloody sacrifice, and now you have Isis, which is the name of what? A goddess. Isis. The number 13 is a goddess number because of the lunar months. And if you look up, and we talked about this extensively last year, and I apologize for it, but if you look up her significance of with the number 13, you'll find she's got it on her hand, and her entire life has been marked by synchronicities with the number 13. Why is Taylor Swift so obsessed with the number 13? And we talked about this extensively on the way up to the Super Bowl. I'm not going to reiterate all of these now, but she puts it into her songs 13 seconds before this verse starts. Here it is, 13 Easter eggs in her music videos. Number 13s are everywhere. Her video filmed in a cubicle on the 13th floor. And sometimes these aren't even intentional. She says whenever she goes to these music awards ceremonies, she's always sitting in aisle 13 or M. But anyway, to get back to the connection here, 13 lunar months, the goddess, all very much connected with this archetype that she portrays. And we were discussing this extensively last year. But now you add in Isis, goddess name, knives. I'm suggesting here there's something more to the picture. Okay, moving on. 737 says you didn't have to say my stupid comment. Lord Laney says, were they doing the Napoleon Dynamite dance moves? Now, my point here, I think, with bringing this up, is that there may be a continuation of the storyline leading up to the Super Bowl. Even though nothing happened that day, there was quite a lot. I had an article about Taylor Swift on my blog about all these suggestions. They were associating her with various celebrities who died young, like Amelia Earhart, for example. They were associating her with tragic figures. They compared her to Princess Diana. And again, Princess Diana, Diana is the lunar goddess name. The goddess Artemis, or Diana, both associated with recent mentions, like the Artemis rocket. But Princess Diana crashed into the 13th pillar. They compared it to Amelia Earhart. Again, female icons, tragic deaths. Taylor Swift was pushed under a car in the movie Amsterdam. So if you haven't seen the musical Amsterdam, 13 minutes in, Taylor Swift is killed. She's shoved under a car. Her flight to attend the 13th Chiefs game was a 13-hour flight. We found some interesting references to her dying in Leave the World Behind, which hasn't even been out for an entire year. And this is an interesting one. If you recall, we talked about this. In Leave the World Behind, this character is looking at some lady on his phone in a bikini, asks, where's Taylor? And they mention Taylor dropping a pin. And she's wearing a blue bikini, by the way. Many references worth looking at. Then there's this stalking narrative between paparazzi and Swift that mirrors that between the paparazzi and Princess Diana. Many blame them for killing her. Lots of media premonitions for a plane crash. Bye Bye American Pie could be translated to be about Taylor Swift, but that's a song about the death of Richie Valens, Big Bopper, and others. It's about halftime show football players. Music dying, Hoover Dam. Here's the Taylor Swift-like character. This is a screen grab from Leave the World Behind. They're asking, where's Taylor? Taylor dropped a pin. And if you look here, this is when all the planes had gone down. It looks like Taylor Swift. And I put together this meme last year. 13th pillar. Taylor Swift is in her Princess Diana era. Biker shorts, dad sneakers, sunglasses. And what does this mean? Why would you associate yourself with tragically killed icons? We'll continue to follow that, but these threats are likely building off of that story. Dirk Zink says Taylor is a witch. Yeah, I think it goes without saying. These entertainers, these mind entrainers, who embody these various archetypes that are highly significant to the astrotheological cult that runs this place, are in fact living idols. This is idol worship. And I'm not suggesting that these musicians are all knowingly or wittingly a part of it, but they're pawns in a bigger game. April English says, first time listener, so what's the truth? What's really happening? I love your show. First time listener. My big picture here is that everybody's programmed, nobody's unprogrammed. It's just the default position, and that media isn't what we think it is, but it's actually monolithic in purpose and in structure. Even though it looks like various competing agencies, competing governments, ultimately it's one. All of the entertainment, all of it, contains copious propaganda that references through what we reference here as predictive programming, but they insert messaging and narratives in advance of planned fake news events because they write our history in advance. And that's all we're doing. We're looking at the news-bent reality, the prefabricated history. Napoleon said, history is lies agreed upon. Well, what is history but mainstream media going back, representing the same interests, the worldview monopolists? But it's so ubiquitous. It's so total. It is a closed system, and it's global. We do have a singular world religion, a singular worldview. But the thing that we're really pointing out here is that the worldview that the consensus has agreed upon has flaws in it. It has lies that augment it. And these lies are inserted into the collective psyche and into our collective belief through psychological operations and propaganda. And so all we're doing is we're sifting through their lies, reality testing their claims, and rejecting things that we have no reason to believe. So we're not conspiracy theorists. In fact, we tend to disbelieve the conspiracy theorists just as much as we disbelieve the mainstream. They're two sides of the same coin. But I'm not here to convince anybody of anything, because the masses are misinformed by design. They are conditioned to be receptive to programming. I'm specifically talking to to those who have recognized and account for the existence of psychological operations. When you look at the news media, if you're not including the fact that it's fundamentally built on lies, that it's manipulated, and that it's augmented with, again, psyops, with hoaxes, with lies, simulated events, if you don't account for that in your view, you don't know what's going on. You have basically adopted a subjective perspective, which is fine. This world is a open air asylum. Believe whatever you want. I'm just aggregating non-believers. And there's a lot of us, and we don't care about the feelings of the believers. And I debate them all the time. Like, how dare you say this event is fake? It's like, well, I don't believe in any of the religions that have been proselytized to me, and the mainstream media religion is the least believable of them all. It is also not hyperbole to say that the massified mind, the average person, is in a doomsday cult. If you believe the science, you must...
Thank you for feeding the cracked in 737. The IPS appreciates the support.
If you are a believer in mainstream science, you must therefore accept the premise that you are in the end times. That is a scientific claim. We are in the end times. We have to do something about capitalism and pollution, or we're all going to die. Or a planet killer asteroid will likely take us out in about 5 years. So, speaking with the authority of science, you can make the claim we are in the end times and should adjust our actions accordingly. If a religious person told you that, you would say that's ridiculous. But this is mainstream science, and I'm saying it's the same thing. That scientism is the new religion. I actually refer to it as nasatology because it includes the entire cosmography which they give us. Also fake. Going through your comments. Thank you, Jennifer Reeves. Gifted a membership, Blue Wrench, to Busy56. Blue Wrench Lodge members get certain perks, access to videos. And again, thank you for feeding the Crack Gwen 737. And that's what we're building right here. We're amassing the Kraken, because there are so many of us who have figured this out, and we're not going to be held back by people who are still on the wrong side of the screen. And in the coming months, there's going to be many opportunities to really shine a light on the situation, and we'll see who is on the correct side of things. Because whatever you think about what we're saying, we are correct. And I'm not just saying that. Like, we know what we're talking about. We have informed disbelief about many of the things that people just take for granted as true. And I'm not here to spoon feed or to dispense white pills or help them. It's like, no, I have no interest in that. I want to highlight the distinction so those who have already figured it out can join us. Simple. We only need about 10,000 to do the work that we need to do. I think we're on the precipice of something magnificent, and it's impossible to overstate it, but I'm not going to state it because it's not something that I can really substantiate at this time, although I can give you some ideas. It's something that can't be co-opted. Every other conspiracy theory, every other niche, these things all become more or less grifts. They become little ecosystems where there's a business of being scared of clouds. There's a business of being an anti-vaxxer. All these things are safe. They don't challenge the status quo. They don't step outside of the box. And what we're doing is fundamentally outside of the box, and that places us outside of the anti-position. Like, some will say, oh, you just say everything's fake. And what that reveals to me is that they are on the wrong side of the screen. The response to that is, you just think everything is real. I mean, that's insane to me. That's insanely naive. The mainstream media writ large is the world state church. It is a religion. It's based upon belief systems. It's not a methodology for discerning truth. And again, there's a fundamental misunderstanding about what media is. Yeah, there's a lot of instances where the media is reporting the truth, like, oh, the sky is blue today. Sure. But liars don't always lie. Good liars, that is. If you're a good liar, you lie strategically to those who trust you. That's how you win. The mass media doesn't lie with every story. They hire armies of truthful people to faithfully report facts as they can report them. But they use that as cover because their overall agenda is not reporting facts to you to inform you about the world. It's to fabricate historic events on the world stage, to produce the events to conform you to a prefabricated worldview. The screen is not a window to the world, but a filter, and always has been. And most of its power in worldview formation isn't just in telling you lies, because most people aren't even paying attention. It's about what it excludes, what its selective focus doesn't pay attention to. Like, it never turns around 180 degrees and focuses on the backstage, the green screens, the harnesses, the fake space, the mass casualty drills presented as real, the crisis actors, the meta scripters, the collusion between government, media, entertainment. It doesn't focus on that. It's a very selective view. But I'm looking forward to the next few months as we get closer to the election, as people get caught up in the drama of this great, it's something of an apostasy, is what we're kicking off here. Dirk Zink says, I had to reprogram my entire brain in a scripted reality I saw during COVID. I was getting treatment in the hospital, how the media and government lied about everything. It was also an awakening to the fact that alternative media is playing controlled opposition to the mainstream. And this is another point. Anybody who goes along with controlled opposition is therefore the controlled opposition. Like, they're told, you are the resistance. No, you are the controlled opposition. That should be InfoWars' tagline. April English says, I worked at a hospital right now, 45 years. Don't believe our medical model. Woke up as an 11-year-old when Kennedy was assassinated. Thank you for your explanation. Yeah, that's an interesting story right there. Tom Wax Bottle Jones says, I'm not here to be a part of something. I like noise, and sometimes I post a comment. Well, you are a part of something. You're either a part of the mainstream mediated mind, this consensus worldview, and you're defending it, or you're openly rejecting it. There's no middle ground. You're on the world stage, or you're not. So which is it going to be? There's no going off the grid if you're still on the world stage. Like if you're like off the grid to a truther means go into the mountains, go into your bunker, and cuddle with your MREs and your guns and your Bibles, and now you're off the grid. No, you're on the grid because you've been terrorized into locking yourself up in a cell because you've been convinced that we're in the end times. Off the grid has to start in the mind. And if you're still mentally processing the propaganda as real, you're in a fundamentalist religious cult. Only the Bible is telling you the lies visually. Their holy book is the screen, this black mirror. So the question of not being a part of something, no, you're part of the world. And the world consists of the misinformed, the programmed. And you're a part of that unless you voluntarily opt out or unless you make some agreement and you're somehow let in on something and you become part of the programming class. But no, you don't have an opt-out outside of what we're doing. So yeah, you actually are a part of this. If you're a skeptic, you're part of a small group of skeptics who have opted out of being programmed by alt and mainstream. Dirk says, I agree with you 100%. Can I ask what made you understand what I call the truth? Okay, let's see here. Oh, here's the thing. I think that really got me to understand this is I started to look at the difference between people because people will not see eye to eye when it comes to politics. There's different world views in competition, but I realized that you have this bifurcated sidewar. It's split perfectly down the middle on every issue. And if you side on any one issue, you will be consistently aligned with all the same people on every other issue on the other side of the fence. It's perfect. This is a staged mind war. It's two sides. It's a political horseshoe. And the gatekeepers within the conspiracy realm are there to keep you from leaving the political arena. They're to keep you voting and fighting against the left. But I think what made me realize that there's a worldview conflict is that each side interprets the same phenomenon with different perspectives, but they agree that it is. They just disagree on the cause. But both of them are always wrong. Like, for example, mass shooting event. Left wing will say, this was caused by guns and gun culture. Right wing will say, this was caused by antidepressants, which is stupid. It really is. For 20 years, right wingers have been saying that antidepressants cause mass shootings. Really dumb. Why do they say that? Because they're part of a dialectic, and their job is to say that it's the result of mental illness or MK Ultra mind control, a black op. The left wing says, no, it's gun culture. The point of it is the black op is a secret government program. So they keep the right, especially the far right, afraid of the secret government. They keep the left afraid of right-wing culture. And observing this, I started to really pick apart these different psyops and how the psyops are target marketed to the left and the right by all sorts of demos, age, sex, gender. There's a lot of ways that they target market these psyops. But then I started looking closer at the predictive programming and how it reinforces the fake news. And the more we examine, just with repetition, we build up a collection of events that we've analyzed, and looking at them through this lens, we've been consistently right. We've been right since 2017. Dirk says, I try to wake up the program people. When I do, they get mad. Yeah, exactly. You can't take people out of their religion. And another point too, when you believe something, like a mass shooting happened. It's a tragic thing. You don't look at it. That is something you accept as real with some level of stress or fear or apprehension. And to say it didn't happen is to, I think, bring back that raw emotion. Like, people are emotional. They're triggered. People do get mad. And it's funny to me. Honestly, I think it's funny. I don't care. Like, I'm so irreverent because who has the moral high ground here? These triggerable, mind-controlled fools who are doing the work of Big Brother by reinforcing the programming, or those of us who are deprogramming, who are calling out the terror theater, which is really targeted at every single person, but it has a purpose. What is that purpose? Is it good? Well, no. You can find many mainstream articles about the psychosomatic effects of obsessing over over shootings, over terrorism, over bad news. Like, the deleterious effects of negative attitudes and a dark worldview are well established. What we're doing here is we're shining a light on the fact that they're using atrocity propaganda to render people pliable, controllable, apathetic. Anyone who defends it is in the wrong. They're on the wrong side of the screen. I think that media advocates are funny at this point. Like, you're going to come to me and say, well, what if you're wrong? Well, prove it. The burden of proof isn't mine. The fact that they can never establish it is their problem. You shouldn't be standing up for the media. You shouldn't be standing up for the liars. And this isn't like a few fake events here or there. No, it's systemic. It's actually part of the infrastructure itself. They are literally writing history, making history in advance. They're writing it in advance, they're executing it. And it's a perfect system. It's a closed system. They don't want your input. And you're not going to have any input. If you're alt media, you're going to be drowned out by the controlled opposition. The only way we're going to have a sustainable presence for media criticism, evaluation, analysis, and even just keeping a record is going to be outside of the alt mainstream dialectic. And I term this the parallel media. We're separate. Like, I'm not in Trutherville. If you're chasing chemtrails and ducking and covering whenever you see a 5G tower, we're not the same. If you think a shooter shot at Trump and a second shooter almost got him and the deep state tried to stop him, we're not the same. Like, that's not what happened. That was not a shooting. The Ashley Babbitt's not dead. Trump was an insider and a PSYOP ringleader for January 6th, betraying all the dupes. Like, if you think he's on your side, we're not on the same team here. Like, you're still in their box. And I'm just saying here, if you enjoy the programming and being mind controlled, stick with it. Drink your Kool-Aid. I'm not trying to take your Q-pipes. What I'm trying to do here, what we are doing, what we have been accomplishing for years, is we are self-segregating from the mind controlled. There is not a skeptical media. There's no platform for skepticism. Alt media is skeptical about mainstream only, not its own claims. Mainstream is skeptical about conspiracy theorists only, not about their own claims. So they're each selectively skeptical. They're not skeptical. The only true skeptics are fakeologists, auto-hoaxers, and John LeBon's crew. If there's more out there, please let me know. I mean, there are various individuals here and there, but how many think tanks are there organized around having the proper perspective, what we call the off-world stage? There aren't that many. The world is rigged says chemtrails and contrails can both exist. You can't prove that. If I had money, I would offer rewards. Like, I'll pay you $500 for a video of a chemtrail. I would love to. No, they can't both exist. You're not a meteorologist. You don't know that. You're just spreading fear. And if you really believed in chemtrails, you would put masks on your children. You wouldn't take your dog out for a walk without masking it, unless you hate your kids and you hate your dog. And I'm willing to bet that the world is rigged will not wear a chemtrail mask. So don't act like you believe in them. Or you're just really brave. Like, I'll just go out there and breathe. Face naked. I'll just breathe in the toxicity. No way. He says, you can't prove otherwise. I don't have to. It's your burden of proof. You made the extraordinary claim. You prove that unicorns are marking their territory in the stratosphere, and it's raining down on us, giving us cancer. Prove it. Prove that Bigfoot flies in a UFO and tracks the ISS. Right the same path, and sometimes you can see the Bigfoot. Like, prove these things. You can make up whatever garbage you want, but you're going to say, oh, there's some chemical trails in the sky. You're lying. And you're also implicating pilots in what? In poison? And this is another example of a bifurcated psyop. Left-wingers will say, yeah, it's true. Gaia's dying because climate change. Right-wingers will say, yeah, Gaia's dying because geoengineering. What's the difference? You're just a chemtrail Greta. You can't prove that chemtrails exist. I can debunk your chemtrails with one argument here. Okay, here it is. The world is rigged has one chance to answer this one or he gets blocked. One chance. Here it is. Condensation trails are predictable using charts from the Air Force that they have always used to prevent their military craft from being tracked. They can predict contrails. You cannot predict chemtrails. So explain that discrepancy. Why aren't chemtrails predictable but contrails are? Because that alone proves that condensation trails are a byproduct of whatever factors make them predictable, namely pressure, altitude. We're talking about weather. And there's no evidence for your side anyway. But there's no reason to be pressing on with something that you have no evidence for. Why not scare people about werewolves or vampires? It's just a superstition at this point. But one of the reasons why this is a sticking point for me is that the parallel media doesn't need chemtrailers because we would be outnumbered. Skeptics would be outnumbered by non-skeptics. Chemtrail theory is a non-skeptical claim, and it rests upon half a dozen logical fallacies. If you fall for chemtrails, if you have been tricked by that, it means that you fall for loaded question fallacy. You just fall for loaded questions. And if you fall for loaded questions, you're not a skeptic. What are they spraying? You're shifting the burden of proof. You're loading the question. You're making an appeal to a motive. There's all kinds built up into it. But so no, the point of it is the fact that your little chemtrails are not predictable, but condensation trails are, destroys your argument. So you don't really have anything. All you have is your fear, and you're like, I'm scared, so I'm going to try to scare other people. Well, I'm not going to be afraid of cirrus clouds. I think they're beautiful. I'm not going to be afraid of anthropogenic cirrus clouds. I'm not going to be afraid of what you tell me to be afraid of. You telling me to mask up? Like, put on your chemtrail mask. It protects me. You not wearing a mask makes me feel unsafe. Okay, chemtrail Karen. Diana South says, on Friday nights here, the men do burnouts on the main street. I go there to breathe them in and laugh. What do you think about my idea that Big Macs contain life extension, and that the so-called evil CEOs decided that the best way to get the most money out of you is to extend your lives? You'll eat more Big Macs in the long run. Okay, no answer from the chemtrail boofer. We were hoping that you would have some explanation for why your chemtrails are not predictable, but contrails are. The thing that's predictable is more likely to be the correct answer than the one that's based purely on ignorance. And that's another issue with it. What are they spraying implies that the answer isn't known and that it's a spray. Like, just because the person asking the question doesn't know does not mean it's a valid question. That's why I brought up the Appelman chart, because there have been many studies documenting the causes of condensation trails, the conditions. There have been many observations and studies over the decades. So to say, what are they doing like it's a question, is in ignorance of decades of research. You don't get to ignore decades of research and then make a statement in the form of a question. It's misleading, it's disingenuous, and it's a lie, basically. So again, quit lying about chemtrails. Dinah South says Big Macs caused Trump's ear to heal miraculously. Yeah, let's go look at that Synchromorpheus find. This was really good. Okay, here we have it. So here's the image of the seven-headed wild beast of Revelation chapter 13. And what Synchromorpheus had pointed out, they totally recreated the seven-headed beast out of the sea scene from the book of Revelation chapter 13 on 7:13. And most of you know this scene. And in the Omen, they reference that the beast would arise from the eternal sea, which they identified with politics. So you see the beast rising up out of this sea. Politics is the sea that constantly rages with turmoil and revolution, interpreted by biblical theologians as the medium from which the Antichrist will come. I looked and saw a beast rising up from the sea, Revelation 13:1. And then you have here Trump with the half a dozen Secret Service agents with his bloodied head up, and he shouts, "Fight, fight, fight." And we see someone on the right of the sea of MAGA supporters throwing up the devil horns as he's escorted away. And we did see that. Let me go ahead and play this clip. And the same person, Synchromorpheus, had noted that when Trump was speaking at the RNC, there was a glitch where it just showed his head and his neck extremely long, and it looked again like one of these images of the beast of Revelation with all these heads. But here he is with his bloodied head moving as a beast with seven heads. One of them mortally wounded and miraculously heals. That's part of the story. Didn't his ear just heal? It was a miracle. And USA, okay, here's another key to it, the MAGA hat. Of course, we talked about the MAGA hat, the 4547 on the side. 911 is the code there, 4 and 5. 4 and 7 is 11, so 911. The significance of the photo of the bullet whizzing by his ear, taken by the same photographer who photographed the Secret Service agent whispering in Bush's ear on 9/11. This is entirely scripted, and we've been looking at this thing from frame to frame basically, but every single shot here is significant. MAGA, Make America Great Again. You could look at this as, well, Make America Great Again implies that it fell. So America has fallen. And so going back to Revelation, the fallen is Babylon the Great. So fallen is Babylon the Great. Make America Great Again, because America has fallen. MAGA also means witch. And the scarlet colored, says she has scarlet across her brow. We're talking about the Whore of Babylon. Well, this scarlet hat says MAGA. And she's described as a sorceress. MAGA is the feminine of Magus. So you kind of have this Whore of Babylon symbolism tied in to the MAGA hat, which we might add into this. So again, here's Trump going down. He stops to say, "Fight, fight, fight." Very interesting. Is this the mortal head wound of the Antichrist? I would say yeah. I'm actually willing to bet that this is it. Couple of other things. Season 4, Episode 8. Season 4 finale. Calling all patriots, we will not allow this stolen election to be certified tomorrow. We must stop Bob Singer's woke anti-soup agenda. Prepare for war. Where we go one, we go vot. This is from this TV show, The Boys, Season 4, Episode 8, the finale, in which this Trump-like character is pictured later with the blood across his face. Cubstar says here, you can connect Stranger Things, Season 4, Episode 8, with The Boys, with the Homelander covered in blood. It's from him going back to the lab where he was tested on the Montauk Project. He goes back and kills everybody, and the scene covered in blood is him leaving. There's an assassination attempt on the president done by a shapeshifter who looks like a hero from Starlight, and it's Starlight who kills the assassin. So what he's saying here is that Stranger Things, which is based on the Montauk Project, and Stranger Things 4-8 had the Trump sniper scene. Boys, Season 4, Episode 8, Homelander, covered in blood, looked like Trump, assassination run. They actually put a warning on that episode because of the Trump shooting. But there's a Montauk Project connection here. Cubstar goes on to say, more concurrent programming in the show Homelander has been out in court. He gets acquitted. It's created by two sides, Team Starlight with their woke supporters and Homelander, which is the MAGA. The hero who joins him is a cross between Alex Jones and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Okay, there's some connections here. Predictive programming, as we would expect, says Homelander's side, his side stages a riot and accuses the other side of killing protesters. I recommend that you watch it. Yeah, I'll take a look. I may have to binge watch this series. And his logo, the logo looks like the number 17, which is a very QAnon-y thing. Dirk Zink says, I am back. Thank you for your channel. I found some like-minded souls here. Yeah, we will be attacked. And the thing is, those who are quick to figure out that psychological operations are the rule, not the exception, when it comes to big tragedies, big terror attacks, big worldview shaping events. We were referred to as auto hoaxers because we called it a hoax right away. And they said, don't call it a hoax. Pretend like it's real and give the victims time to mourn. So we had truthers telling us, hold back on your opinions. Wait. Suspend calling it a hoax. But they were not suspending calling it real. So true skepticism is waiting till you have the facts before you decide. But they were going with the assumption it was real unless proven fake. So we had to reverse that and say, no, it's fake until proven real. And we've stuck with that because it's the reasonable way to go. It's actually logical. And we've been correct every time. And if let's say you call something a hoax and it's not. Well, if it's not, it means that there's evidence. And what is the media's job? I mean, this is the information age. There should be no shortage of information. We should be able to find the truth about things pretty quickly, but you know how it is. Now, there's a couple of other points I wanted to make on that, and this is one of them. So, Lori says, you're right when using the true meaning of false flag, but this wasn't one. The Trump assassination was a magic trick. Goes on to say, false flag over time is used as a universal phrase for anything fake, any magic trick, any total bullshit, which is true. A lot of people throw around the term, it's a false flag, and I'm saying stop it. The term false flag is way too loaded. We can't use it anymore. It contains a built-in presupposition that media is doing reportage and is not involved in the misrepresentation of simulations as actual events. And there's no shortage of incidents I can bring up right now to back my claims here. I mean, how many of you have seen reporters leaning into a hurricane and shouting at the camera about how bad the weather is, only to see someone walking their dog in the background? Like, they will LARP against the weather, make it seem more extreme than it is. We've pointed out how even the NPR covered this, that during the 2015-2016 school year, there were more than 250 school shootings that were reported that didn't happen. The article was called The School Shootings That Weren't. I highly recommend it. Accidental reporting. This is real reporting. So NPR thought, oh, we're going to dig up a lot of really good, juicy anti-gun propaganda. So they investigated 240 school shootings, and at the end of it, they couldn't find one. They couldn't find one. It says here, we were only able to confirm 11 reports, but of the 161, no incidents took place. In 4 cases, something did happen, but it didn't meet the parameters for a shooting. And it goes down in details about how this happened, how this wrong information got out there. The point here is that had they not fact checked it, a lot of people would still run around saying, oh, we had 250 mass shootings this year. Well, we didn't. This is atrocity propaganda that went below the radar. And this is because somebody in media accidentally fact checked their own side, and that would be NPR. Somebody probably got fired for that. Here we have 125 between YouTube and Twitter. We're kind of plodding along here. I'm trying to get through. But my point here is the term false flag is loaded. Anyone using it is ill-informed, or there's some kind of an operative. Operatives, agents, provocateur will use the term false flag because it basically says the government did it. That's what it means. When somebody says it's a false flag, they're really just saying the government secretly did it, no matter what the lying media says. The assumption is the media is government, and that the alt media is anti-government, represents the people. Big lies. It's structurally built this way to where you have this false division and everyone falls within it. They've engineered a political horseshoe. Messianic Charlatan posted this. He said, these posters were everywhere, contemporaneous with Murderous Axel, the Rwandan child star Brit. So you had that Murderous Axel. Let me bring this up. Teenager charged with murder following knife attacks. And his name is Axel. Axel Rudakabana, 17. He attacked a Taylor Swift themed dance class. And he had a history, it looks like he has some kind of an internet movie database, or he was on some charity promo, sort of like Trump's shooter, who did some BlackRock commercial. But his name is Axel. And while that story is out, contemporaneous with it, as pointed out by Messianic Charlatan, there were posters all over the subways for this Netflix show, Axel is Back. Sort of like we saw the Thine Ears Shall Bleed, that came out as Trump's shooting happened, or the Captain America comes out where Harrison Ford, in the very trailer, is a president being shot at during a speech in a theater. I mean, we've seen so many examples of concurrent programming. It's safe to say, if it's in your face, it's programming. If it's a movie poster in the subway, there's a meme that's going into your subconscious that is going to entrain your subconscious with what you're going to see in the news in the coming weeks, if not that very day. Like, you want to watch the news, but you don't want to watch the news, just watch Netflix. You'll know what's going on in the world according to the dominant voices and platforms. So again, Axel is back. July 3rd. He's holding a pistol. Kind of ominous. I'll have to look into this. I may actually watch it. I haven't watched any Eddie Murphy in a while, unless you count Shrek. I went to the Atomic Museum, and I think I came down with radiation sickness because I was sick. And I never get sick. I was out for like a week. And I watched Shrek 1, 2, and 3. And I thought Eddie Murphy was pretty funny in that. Alright, let's catch up on comments. Phones are still open. Hark says, supposedly there's a lot of Trump shooting predictive programming in Captain America. Yeah, let me go ahead and show you this. So my list of the top 11 Donald Trump predictive programming shooting examples, I'll put a link below. And these go deep. Number 7, Brave New World, which originally was going to be called New World Order. It features Harrison Ford as a president who survives an assassination attempt in a theater. Now, a couple of things about this. The glass around him shatters. A lot of Trump's critics were saying that a teleprompter was shot and the glass cut his ear. Well, that's what happens here. The teleprompters and the glass explode. But this is just a sea of glass. But anyway, this is Captain America Brave New World Harrison Ford being shot at while he gives a speech. A couple of things here. Harrison Ford's birthday is 7/13. The shooting was 7/13. Julius Caesar's birthday, 7/13. Donald Trump was represented in Julius Caesar in the park in 2016, where they killed Donald Trump. And that is an interesting connection for a few reasons. Lend me your ears. But mainly, Trump being murdered is not a new thing. But you have this connection between the dates and Harrison Ford. And you could add on to it, it's in a theater, like Ford Theater, kind of an Abe Lincoln reference. But this came out on the same day. So you're watching Trump getting shot at, you turn it on the TV and you look, oh look, there's a commercial for the new Captain America. And it's the president being shot at. And here's what I mentioned earlier. Doug Mills, photographer for the New York Times, photographed Bush having 9/11 whispered into his ear, and here's Trump with a bullet whizzing by his ear. So the ear symbolism, the ear being shot at, whizzing by his ear, whispering in the ear. There's some symbolism here, and I think I know what it means, but for now, I'm just pointing it out. Same photographer, which is kind of similar to Richard Drew, who photographed the 9/11 falling man and the death of RFK as he fell to his death. So examples of AP photographers, each one with a historic photograph connected to an assassination and 9/11. And then there's this, the Atlantic with the ear clipped exactly where he was shot. And there are really big channels that, like Colin Rugg, he said, just in, Trump confirms a chunk of his ear is gone. Details to come after this interview at the New York Post. Okay, so again, his ear's not gone. None of us have seen evidence that his ear is clipped. I was hoping he would take one for the team and have his ear surgically mutilated. But no, he didn't. But the Atlantic had this in advance, and this is not the first example of the Atlantic foreshadowing the shooting. And I was looking at this for weeks, but I just was noting that this is like a bloody head, and you see a blood drip over his eye. I didn't really note how significant it was that the ear is clipped in this way. And again, this is the Atlantic, owned by Alex Soros, son of George Soros, and soon-to-be husband of Uma Abedin, the ex-wife of Anthony Weiner. Really small circle of people, really small world at the capstone level of the Illuminati dung heap. Okay, there Axel's back. I may check that out. Evangelical leaders, this is from Newsweek, call out danger as prophets tie God to Donald Trump. Last week we were talking about Brandon Biggs. Brandon Biggs became popular after an old video of him discussing an attempt on Trump's life recirculated. There are a lot of people who are suggesting this was divine, that he was shot at 611 because Ephesians 611, the armor of God, which is a popular number meme slogan among the right wing. It has been for years. And this is how they obfuscate it. Instead of calling it fake, they think this is the hand of God. This is like the synchromystics. Synchromystics will say, this can't be a coincidence, it must be a higher power. Well, religious people are saying, this must be God. God saved Trump. Okay, so God saved Trump, but he's like, I don't give a crap about this fireman or his family. I'm just going to save Trump. Like, I'm sorry, what kind of God, places a greater importance over a politician than a fireman who's willing to lay down his life to save somebody else? I mean, it's like a lose-lose situation here. But this prophet, Brandon Biggs, has been exposed as a fraud. He goes back and he deletes all of his false prophecies, his wrong, and like, you could be Nostradamus today if you just record 100 prophecies, but don't release them all, but keep them on private, and then only reveal the ones that come true. That's how this works. That's how the Texas sharpshooter fallacy works. It's not valid. And it's also not valid to say, this event happened 333 days after this movie came out, therefore it's significant. It's not significant if it doesn't have predictive capability. I'm convinced now that a lot of people are applying the Texas sharpshooter fallacy in order to prove themselves right, and that's cheating. If you're going to be a prophet, you need to announce things in advance with specificity. And this guy, Brandon Biggs, deleted a lot of stuff. He said that Trump was going to have his eardrum blown out, and he was going to be shot at a big MAGA rally, and there'd be these tall mountain peaks in the background. Well, there's no mountains in Butler, Pennsylvania. Trump's eardrum didn't blow up. I mean, you can't just subtract the misses and focus on the hits and say that you're a sharpshooter. It doesn't work that way. But a lot of people fall for it because they don't recognize the fallacy. And this is why I say that we don't let chemtrail believers into the parallel media. If you fall for these tricks, if you fall for loaded questions, if you fall for every little fallacy thrown your way, you're not truly a skeptic. You're just believing too quickly. Too quick to believe. In recent years, a number of influential evangelical figures have come forward and spoken about receiving prophecies about President Donald Trump as a secular messiah who will deliver conservative Christians from cultural exile. A lot of these, not even just MAGA types, but a lot of right-wing Christian nationalists now believe that they are the Jews. Like that white Christian nationalists are the true Jews and America is Israel. Like, it's pretty convoluted, but Trump is their David, their King David. That's what he's been called. He's their Moses. He's basically God. This is apotheosis in progress. It says when Trump was grazed by the bullet, some said it was part of a wider set of prophecies. Charlie Shamp told his 1.26 million Instagram followers he had predicted it twice. And everybody was predicting it. Everybody was. We were talking about this headshot, and we even specified it wouldn't kill him and that it would be fake. But we were talking about this for months. Like, nobody is a prophet in this. Now, I caught this comment here from someone on Twitter, Dr. Kroner, who said, they had eyes on him for 3 minutes with a gun on a roof, and they didn't do anything to alert Trump. They called an ambulance to the crowd instead of alerting the crowd. People were shot and someone was killed. But if you see, so this person believes it was real. But he's saying that people weren't evacuated, but they brought in an ambulance. And it didn't seem to make sense to this person. Well, it makes sense if you realize that you're looking at a hoax, and that wasn't a real ambulance. Like, it may have been, but they were just bringing these actors in and taking them off of the set. Hark says if you're writing the script, it's quite easy to prophesize. Yeah, this is where you get into the realm of predictive programming being so obvious that the mainstream media notices. They'll say, what a coincidence, the episode Assassination Run mirrors the news. What a coincidence that there's a derailment in Palestine, Ohio with a toxic airborne event, just like the movie White Noise. What a coincidence that ever since Leave the World Behind, Boeing has taken a dive. And speaking of Boeing, in the movie Fly Me to the Moon, there's all kinds of jokes about Boeing and explosions and disasters. Are you telling me that this is just coincidental? No, they inserted that when they made the movie because they knew that in 2024 there'd be a lot of stuff going down with Boeing. The CEO stepped down, they gave him $33 million, all kinds of whistleblowers dying. Boeing becomes an epithet for basically disaster. The name Boeing is synonymous with disaster. But right now, the Boeing Starliner is stranded in space until next year. It's not going to be coming down until next year, February. And I want to add on to that. The Boeing Starliner capsule is called Calypso, And Calypso ties into the Odyssey. So it brings in the whole space odyssey narrative, which has been established from the very beginning of the space program. It's the story of mankind's journey into the space age. So here we are in this space odyssey collectively. And this Starliner goes up there in the Calypso. Calypso is the name of the nymph who holds Odysseus captive. I mean, he's not like chained up, but he's basically stranded at her place for years. So the name Calypso has everything to do with being stranded. So it's kind of notable, and we predicted that there would be disasters with this Starliner thing. Before it even launched, we were talking about the disastrous launch to come and why it would be a disaster. But that capsule has lived up to its name. Nominative determinism. The idea that people or things gravitate to fit their names. Yeah, the Calypso, stranded, it fits. But it also ties in the Odyssey thing. Dirk Zink says, we live in a scripted reality and the slave masters know in advance what's going to happen. If you want a great example of how this works, look at the 30-minute play, The Newsbenders, where someone is let in on the secret that they write the news 5 years in advance, and how it's done. And I think that's truth in plain sight. Rilo05 says Boeing was in trouble in 2019 just before COVID as well. Well, they made a big deal about associating the name Boeing with fiery explosions in the Fly Me to the Moon. So I expect nothing but disasters for that particular mission. So let me follow up on this. Yesterday, I had mentioned that Ye had been addicted to laughing gas by this dentist to the stars, according to Milo Yiannopoulos. Well, Milo has had to walk back a couple claims. This dentist wasn't putting fake diamonds in people's mouths, but many people can attest to this idea that Ye is addicted to laughing gas, and that maybe it was done to sabotage his mind and plunder his wealth. But I'm looking at Ye as a Truman in a Truman Show. Like, he may not know what's going on. And I wonder how many of these celebrities belong to families who are insiders, who are part of the programming class, but because their children aren't let in on it. Possibly not ever. And Ye might be such a person. So here's a description of Ye's life according to Milo Yiannopoulos. And this sounds like the Truman Show. He's explaining how Ye is completely surrounded by people who tell him what's going on, and he has no direct connection, and he wouldn't know that the sky was blue if someone told him it was a different color. He wouldn't be able to fact check it.
All this so difficult. Ye has constructed a very difficult ontological reality around himself, where he doesn't read any original documents, he doesn't read any contracts, he won't read anything at all, and he doesn't even sign his own stuff. And instead, he gets all his information from people, from sort of warring groups of fans or groupies or hangers-on, and he never really knows what's true, because he sort of deliberately gets different versions from different people all in conflict and then just does whatever he wants. So he only receives information in the form of he said, she said. And therefore he has absolutely no idea how to figure out what's real and what's true. And I think the cumulative effect of that, plus substances, is probably extremely difficult to deal with.
He has just described every single person on Earth. Every one of us. We're all in this Truman Show, this false worldview, where we are more or less dependent on our sources for what is real and what is fake, to know what is true and what is not true. And it's very subjective. You can choose your own sources. But in this case, Ye is extremely insulated. And he goes on to explain what a disadvantaged position he's in, because he is overly reliant on second-hand perception. And I think this is a fascinating example of how it might actually be for many celebrities who are surrounded by handlers who may be dangerously close to be perhaps even a threat to the system should they find out what they're a part of or how much of it is fake. I mean, they have to gatekeep people who might blurt something out. I wonder too if Pete Davidson is completely insulated like this as well, and maybe he doesn't know that 9/11 was a psyop, even though his father supposedly died at 33 in one of the towers.
And I think it's probably extremely difficult for him to make good decisions because he's created this world around him where he's got no way to tell if the sky's really blue or not. Because he only gets information in from the circle of people around him, which is constantly changing.
Very interesting. Looks like a Truman Show situation. They're probably going to Michael Jackson him. We will follow up that story. We've talked a bit about the predictive programming around Trump, just scratching the surface. I mean, it is so in-depth, and this Trump shooting was very vindicating. It affirms everything we've been talking about. One of the key points is the Robert De Niro situation. Robert De Niro shows up outside the courthouse, and from that we were able to extrapolate all kinds of examples of Robert De Niro programming, one example of which had De Niro as Trump in his role as the senator in Machete. But the thing with that is he played Trump in 2024 and 2010. He was foreshadowing Trump, but he was foreshadowing Trump before Trump was even in politics. And in this movie, Machete snipes him as he's talking about immigration and how he's against it. Well, when did Trump get shot? That's right, he was talking about immigration and pointing at the immigration sign. And why did the shooter shoot him? According to Gab and his own postings, it was over immigration policy. So there's a consistency in the nuance even with the predictive programming and the subsequent news events. And what's more, this is an example of predictive programming in place before Trump even fulfilled that role. These are roles. These are role players. These are roles on the world stage. Dirk says, what is your opinion about Jake the A-hole on YouTube? He's right about pretty much everything. I don't know if he's wrong about anything. I think he believes in chemtrails. But other than that, he's right about everything. And I can understand that. But chemtrails is a very particular psyop. I believe they chose it because it acts as there's like a web. These lies are like, they constitute a web where they plant little stories, and if you get caught on one, it's going to lead you to another one, and it's going to connect you to an entire body of beliefs. And each of these beliefs is represented by a gatekeeper who maintains that this threat or that threat is real. And they're adding rather than subtracting. And skepticism is about subtracting. It's the negative route, the subtractive. What can I verify? What should I dismiss? It doesn't start with let's believe it all, or worse, this doesn't make sense. Let me come up with additional information. Ryler says, I don't believe millions of people are coming across the border. Every election cycle, you're going to hear about people climbing over the border and why it's a problem. The right wing will say, you should be afraid. There are military-age men. Left-wingers will say, it's a good thing we have working-age men coming to work. So like, which one is true? Are they working age? Are they military age? Are they coming here to fight or to work? Good question, right? It depends on who you ask. If you're a right-winger, you believe that there are armed immigrants jumping the border and committing murders and crimes at an unprecedented scale. If you're on the left, you think there's a bunch of workers. Now, it gets even deeper when you go into the bifurcated war and how it's sold. You have influencers like Tucker Carlson who say illegal aliens, military-age men are coming from Africa and very far away places, and they're a threat to you and your family. Next segment, aliens are real, but they're dark, and they're evil, and they're demonic. So on the one hand, he's talking about illegal aliens are scary from far away. And now the alien aliens are scary from far away. So this xenophobia doesn't just pertain to space invaders and illegal invaders, but the same reasoning is applied to their attitude towards any kind of impurities. It's all about blood purity. That's what it comes down to. It's sort of a quarantine. Each side has its own version of the quarantine. The right wing wants to be quarantined with traditional values. They want their skin intact. They want to be quarantined against the pokey. And then vice versa. On the other side, the left, they worship aliens. They laugh at angels because angels are fake, but they worship aliens. The right wing thinks that aliens are demons, but they believe in angels. The left wing loves illegal immigration. The right wing obviously fears it. So my point here is that both sides are being played by alternate versions or alternate interpretations for something that's ultimately fake. Ryler05 says right-wingers believe the Chinese army is just across the border. Yeah, like eight years ago, they would have said there are Middle Easterners wearing sombreros, pretending to be Mexicans, coming across the border with bombs around their belts, and they're going to blow up Jewish delis and scream Allah Akbar. Nobody talks about that anymore. What happened to radical Islam? Now it's the Chinese. The World is Rigged says, am I blocked here? I don't know if we blocked you. We were waiting for you to respond. How come your, quote, chemtrails are not predictable? Because contrails are. And if you can't explain why your chemtrails aren't predictable, then you don't have a case. You can rest easy. You can breathe easy. Go outside, breathe deep. Don't fear the clouds. You have nothing to fear. You can take your mask off if you can't debunk what I've said. Dirk Zink says, that's why I brought up Jake. Yeah, look, the chemtrail thing is a truth or ism. It's not real. But it's an easy sales pitch, because if you're a government agent and you're trying to recruit people into this alt media paradigm, you need to find people who are ignorant of the truth and susceptible to logical fallacies. It's bait. And it's meant to breadcrumb you and lead you into this umbrella that contains all kinds of other conspiracy theories. The World is Rigged says, how could they be predictable? I don't understand. Well, if chemtrails are not predictable but contrails are, then which one is more likely to exist? Because the chemtrail is a mislabeled contrail. The fact that contrails are predictable would lead you to think they are, or should lead you to believe that they are real. When you're talking about your so-called chemtrails, you can't predict them. You don't know. You don't have any information. It's just conjecture and rumor. But no, we can predict contrails. You can't predict chemtrails. And so the thing that's not predictable is fake. The thing that is predictable is real. And we're talking about repeated observations. We're talking about there are websites you can go to that can tell you with certainty if you're going to have condensation trails. And one of the logical fallacies that trips up a lot of chemtrail believers is faulty causality. Like Crow 777 falls for this one. He says, if there's a lot of chemtrails above your house, boil some vinegar in your front yard, and it will turn your skies blue. Does that make sense to you? Well, it only makes sense if you assume that if A occurs before B, A caused B, which is not true. Those trails would have dissipated with or without the boiled vinegar. He just took credit for it. But he falls for that. Faulty causality. Others will say, it was a clear sky, then I saw trails, then it rained. The trails brought the rain. Nope, same flaw in your argument there, the reasoning there. The reason you saw the trails is that the atmosphere was already conducive to rain and it was going to rain anyway. The trails just gave it away. It blew the cover. Now you're not surprised by the rain that was coming anyway. Trails do not bring rain. That's faulty causality. So if you're falling for that faulty causality and you think the trails bring the rain, it's simply that your reasoning is based on seeing these things in a sequence and attributing as cause the thing that came first, and that's not what brought it. The rain brought the rain, and the trails merely give away what was already going to be there. The World is Rigged says, do you believe in weather modification? I'm not a believer. I'm not a believer in climate change. I'd rather know what's true than be a believer, because believers are confused. You're confused. You don't know how contrails are predictable because you're confused. And you're only confused because you have not availed yourself of the available information. You haven't looked. And your argument is coming from a place of ignorance. So I can reject it, but I'm not. I'm just pointing out the flaws in your argument. Clump says, I can't prove it wasn't going to rain anyway, so that's true. No, you can look at charts. You can look at weather patterns. You can talk to your local weatherman and ask him about, okay, is it going to rain on this day? And on this day, should I expect to see an accumulation of condensation trails that are persistent because of the atmospheric conditions? And they'll say, yeah. There are websites that can show you if there's going to be contrails because it's likely there could be rain. The World is Rigged. And this is interesting because every single chemtrail believer does the same thing. You point out that contrails are fake and they'll say, well, what about geoengineering? What about cloud seeding? What about Bill Gates' stratospheric aerosol injection? What about? You keep changing the subject. You get proven wrong and you're like, oh, so you don't believe in cloud seeding? Well, first of all, cloud seeding exists. What you're revealing to me is that you have a misunderstanding of what cloud seeding is. You think cloud seeding is some magic where planes fly and create the rain. So your understanding of cloud seeding is wrong. And you probably don't understand what geoengineering is. And I have a rule here because I've spent too much time debating chemtrail believers. I know you're invested in your fear, but you don't wear a mask. So you're not that concerned. Stop pretending you're a crisis actor at this point. I'm not going to take a call from Greta. If Greta wants to call in and make me feel bad about climate change, I'm not going to take it. Why would I take the call from a chemtrail believer? Unless you have video.
I'll take a call from Greta.
Infinite Plane Radio.
Greta wants to call in and make me feel
Hey, it's Mike. You're talking about me.
Yeah. Do you have any?
Have me on.
Yeah, you're on the phone. You can go ahead and turn your speaker down.
Oh, I'm down. I'm sorry. I didn't hear myself. Okay. So what do I have proof chemtrails exist? Is that what your question is?
Like video or photos, yeah.
Video or photos? How many videos or photos have you seen by now? Sorry, my dog's.
Yeah, do you have any evidence?
What?
Do you have any evidence of chemtrails?
No, I have government documents tell us that they manipulate the weather. Can you prove those are false?
I don't believe government documents constitutes an argument.
Okay, so those are false?
Or you're misreading it. Which government
Well,
document?
what do you mean?
What government document?
You never seen?
What government document?
You never seen the
What government document do you have in your hand right now?
the document from 1996 talking about owning the weather by 2025?
I would have to see it. It sounds.
You've never seen that by now? You've been around this long?
I haven't seen anything that convinced. Look, I was told that the oceans were going to swallow up Florida by 2012. Have you heard that?
Bullshit.
Wait,
Okay,
why is it?
Wait,
why is that bullshit? Climate scientists say it's true. Are you saying Al Gore is bullshit?
Because, what do you mean?
You don't believe in climate change?
I believe in man-made climate change because they're doing it on purpose, yes.
So you believe in climate change, like Greta does, right?
Like, come on, man. Are you the straw man captain or what?
I'm pointing out here.
Like Greta? What the hell are you talking about, IPS?
That climate change is a liberal belief, and right-wing conspiracies believe in geoengineering.
No. I'm saying it the other way around. Right-wing because of chemtrails. That's a right-wing conspiracy.
Yeah, it's
people have been saying this forever who aren't left or right. What are you talking about? They've been saying it since the 90s.
You're on the right, and this started in the 90s. And no,
I'm on the right.
Climate change is a right-wing myth. I'm sorry, left-wing myth, and geoengineering and chemtrails is a right-wing thing. So you're both accepting the same premise. You both think that
No, yeah, because here's what you're doing. You're strawmanning. You got all these retards out here that show this big old long line in the sky and they say, this is a chemtrail and it's barium, strontium, all this bullshit, right?
That's the common
You don't
accepted
think they
definition.
manipulate the weather by
Wait,
this point in
you
time?
can't dodge. Those lines in the sky is the common denominator. Chemtrail believers are afraid of those lines in the sky. All of the memes, all of the photos.
But you're strawmanning all.
That's
people
not a straw
that
man.
believe that
I'm describing you accurately.
Yes, I'm not scared of the lines in the sky.
Why not?
That's a straw man.
So what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of then? An invisible gas?
I'm not afraid of anything. I'm just pointing out the fact I believe they manipulate the weather. You should have seen. I'm in Connecticut right now.
Like with
You should have
CO2?
seen, dude, it's rained
Is there
for the
CO2?
past 2 weeks.
Like how would they, how would they?
I've
But
never
how?
seen this.
How are they manipulating the weather? With too much CO2, too much carbon? What's doing it?
Well, they have the whole. I mean, I can't list it all for you right now. I don't have it all on. If you look at the document, they tell you how they do it.
What I'm saying,
So owning the weather by 20. Pull it up.
nobody's manipulating the weather. It's not happening.
You don't think that's possible?
I don't think it's been done. There's no evidence.
So you
to
don't
support
believe
that.
in you don't believe in cloud seeding?
Cloud seeding is not the same thing. Cloud seeding
That's
is
not manipulating the weather.
okay. Well, putting up an umbrella on a sunny day is manipulating the weather. Turning on your air conditioner, manipulating the weather. On a very small
that's what they're
scale.
doing. They put up an umbrella.
That's
That's a perfect example. They put an umbrella up there. You never seen this? Are
Nobody.
you playing stupid?
No, I'm saying that you don't have any evidence for weather manipulation. That's
Well,
a
you don't have
fantasy.
any evidence. It's not true. I have the government documents. You can't prove it's not true.
Burden of proof is on you, and you have the same.
Why?
You
When
have,
the government's documents.
the government also says.
It's on you.
The government also
Huh?
says. The government also says climate change is real. Why are you denying that?
Okay, can you prove that's not true?
Wait, yeah, I can. There's no evidence for it. Climate change is fake. All their prophecies have fallen short.
No, the climate's changing, my friend. This summer, the last
There we
two
go.
summers
See, I
here
told
in
you.
Connecticut-
The whole
Oh,
point.
yeah, it's just- oh,
no,
yeah.
you accept the
Nobody
premise
can
that
say anything.
man's
Huh?
changing the weather. You accepted the premise that man's changing the climate. That's what they need you to accept.
Yeah, that's I'm a good slave. I accepted the premise, right?
You did. You bought their God construct. Do you believe in nukes too?
No, I think you don't know what the hell you're talking about, dude.
No, I think you're just basically Greta, but on the right wing.
Greta,
You're a
on the other
chemtrail.
side,
You're like, how
yeah.
dare you not
'Cause
believe?
I just learned about these. I just learned about them the other day. I watched Dane Wigington, right? No, I think that you don't know what the hell you're talking about.
I
And to be like, well, there's contrails exist, so chemtrails can't exist.
You say though, you're saying, just for the record here, that the lines in the sky are nothing to worry about.
The lines in the sky? Well, it depends on it depends on how it is, man. Of course there's going to be contrails, I would think. Of course there'd be line. You know, sometimes they stick around, sometimes, and I know you're going to say it depends on the pressure and the humidity and all this. I've gone through all this stuff. The real thing that I'm talking about is it is changing.
No, don't distract though. Are the lines in the sky? Are the lines in the sky chemtrails or not?
Well, it depends, doesn't it? Can't there be lines in the sky that aren't chemtrails?
Are there lines in the sky that are chemtrails or not?
Are there chemtrails in the sky? Which lines are you talking about? So you have to be specific here. This is a straw man shit. Oh, just because there's contrails, there can't be any chemtrails.
So are there
That's
lines?
where you're
Are
full
there
of shit.
chemtrails?
That's what you're trying to
Do chemtrails exist? You can't answer yes or no.
Are chemicals in the sky?
Do chemtrails exist? Yes or no?
What is a cloud seed? How do they cloud seed?
See, why are you getting into sophistry? Why can't you just answer yes or no?
Well, because you're trying to pin me in. Every line on the sky is a chemtrail, right? I've been down this road a long time ago.
Okay,
They'll be like, whoa,
1 out of 10.
I can prove it. This
1 out of 10.
Huh?
1 out of 20. Like, is there a certain number of lines in the sky that are quote chemtrails?
I have no idea about that, Tim. All I'm telling you is they manipulate the weather, and for you to try to say they don't is retarded.
So you don't believe in chemtrails, but you believe in climate change. That's fine.
How do you cloud seed?
Cloud seeding is not climate change.
How do you cloud seed?
Cloud
Why are
seeding.
you not answering my question?
Okay, I can tell you. Cloud seeding. Not only is it.
What do? You have a line of chemicals?
No, that's not how it works.
You put them in a
no,
cloud?
No. Well, cloud seeding is they're dropping nuclei into an existing cloud to add on to rain that was already
And
there.
how did they do that?
It's not done at the level of.
From an airplane?
It's not done with hot jet air
So
exhaust.
how does that happen?
You keep
what
cutting
would
me off.
happen if you started
Okay, look. No,
putting
all chemtrail believers will talk over you and jump to cloud seeding when you call them out on the lie. You don't believe in chemtrails.
That's the basic.
You don't believe in chemtrails. You said that you said in the chat. You said in the chat.
In the sky is no, I believe in them. I don't believe every line in the sky is a chemtrail.
Okay, well, which one is? Which line in the sky is a chemtrail?
How the hell do I know? You've never seen? Are you being honest here?
I've never seen a chemtrail. I've never seen a chemtrail.
You've never seen you're out in your backyard. Like, I've done a lot of gardening, and I'm just being honest with you. You're going to say, "Oh, this doesn't prove anything." That's fine. I'm just going to tell you something.
Aren't you looking at the ground when you're gardening?
I'm trying to paint the picture for you, man. I'm outside all day long, and all of a sudden, a bunch of planes are showing. I haven't seen one all day long. And then all of a sudden, every 10 minutes, there's another jet. You've never seen this?
I've never seen a chemtrail.
Well, how would you know it's a chemtrail or not?
What's in a chemtrail?
Chemicals?
Is it being sprayed?
Well, they'll say, barium, strontium, all this shit. I don't know, dude. I'm not claiming to say that. But you really think...
Wait, I don't know. I don't... Okay, wait. I don't know is an appeal to ignorance, an argument from ignorance. And don't you think
that's a stupid point to pick right there.
And
that's retarded to try to pick that right there. You're just grasping straws right now.
No, you're applying logical fallacies here. You're saying you don't think the government would do it. That's an appeal. That's an appeal to motive.
I don't know.
You're saying you don't know.
How would I know?
I don't know is not an argument in favor of your point. That's an appeal to ignorance.
I'm not making an argument when I say I don't know.
Yeah, you are.
What the hell are you talking about?
By saying you don't know, you're implying that it's not known, that there is a valid question there, and there's not a valid question.
Known,
there's not a valid.
I'm sure it is known.
It is known. It is known.
If someone's spraying it, it's known for sure.
No, what is known?
Obviously.
What is known is that condensation trails are predictable, and chemtrails are not. Known? Yes, it is. Look up the Appleman chart in 1958.
Okay. When did I say condensation trails don't exist?
You've been tap dancing between condensation and contrails. No. You won't give me a straight answer. It's like This is like talking to somebody who's possessed. Like you're trying.
You think so? Or are you just a twister?
You're twisting your own words to avoid the fact that you're wrong.
I'm not twisting anything.
You said you don't believe in chemtrails. Now you do. Now some contrails are chemtrails, some aren't. You don't have an answer.
I came on here to talk about chemtrails.
Do they exist?
What are you talking about?
So do they exist?
They have to.
Okay, so we made it. We made it. You exist. You say chemtrails exist. It took me 5 minutes to drag it.
Prove the claim.
I had to drag it out. It took 5 minutes to get you to admit that you believe in chemtrails.
Well, how else could you do it?
Now,
I mean, the government. Okay, so the government in their official you never seen the document I'm talking about, or are you just playing stupid?
I think you're
owning the weather by 2024 or 2025. You never seen that? Or are you playing stupid?
No, I think you're kind of deflecting from the fact that there's no such thing as chemtrails, and you have no evidence for them.
The government tells us there are, so it's
the government tells us that we went to the moon. The government tells us that 9/11 was a real terror attack. The government tells us that there's a pandemic and we have to shut everything down. Do you believe the government on everything?
Well, no, you're putting the onus and proof on me, but I'm
putting
it back on you.
Okay, well, I got another call. Appreciate your information. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey,
how are you doing, Colin?
You're really caught up on the aerosol injection thing, huh?
Well, I'm just trying to find an honest chemtrail believer.
Dude, check it out, man. It's like so many of us have been outside and watched them go back and forth, gritting the fucking sky, that your argument is mute and you're only losing listeners at this point. Standing on it.
So you've seen chemtrails?
I've seen them definitely releasing something.
The last caller said that's a straw man.
I don't have a chem kit. I can't fly up there and collect the shit and submit it for a test.
Take a video of it then, because...
Dude, they admit it. How many people have to call and tell you that they don't even cover it up anymore, dude? I've told you 3 times now, look up the NASA CARES project.
Now, what is in these, quote, chemtrails?
Hello, look up the NASA CARES project.
I'll look it up, but what I want to ask you, though, is, like, are you worried about your lung health long term?
I'm more worried about the Internet of Things, and I think that's more what it has to do with, is getting everything, embedded with aluminum and barium particles so they can complete their Internet of Things, as they call it.
Okay, well, look, my contention is this. I think climate change is there to scare the populations into adopting government controls.
Change is bullshit.
It's scary.
And the bad climate change that is going on is them pushing it to try and further their climate agenda.
Right, that's the right-wing
your
take.
Audience,
no. The audience
might
here
not be able to talk to you very well, but we understand where you're coming from, Tim. But we don't understand why you're clinging on to these little.
No, you're the clinger here. Here's what you're missing: that nobody's changing the climate. Geoengineering is not what you think it is. The world is not coming to an end.
What is it? If geoengineering isn't what I think it is, what is it?
Look up the definition. Geoengineering. No. Let me tell you. According to
Neil deGrasse Tyson explain how HAARP works. They heat up the atmosphere with ionic heaters, dude, and they cause the high pressure system that's sitting over California and causing all the freaking hot weather and the lack of rain.
Fire and brimstone. World's gonna end. You sound exactly like Al Gore to me. I think that there's this sky phobia, fear of the world ending that they want both sides to believe in. You believe in it.
It ain't fear of the world ending. We don't want them to be able to fucking treat us like computers and read us like freaking tablets.
You're not worried that the 5G towers are going to ignite the atmosphere?
We don't want to be able to be programmed like a freaking computer, dude.
Do you believe
that's what they're freaking spreading, putting in the food, the water, everything.
This sounds like doom porn. Is there anything you're not afraid of?
Do you know what the Internet of Things is? Have you heard that term?
Yeah, I heard Alex Jones talk about it.
Have you listened to any of the freaking speeches and everything that everybody from Bill Gates to all the way over to whoever is given?
I think you're just scared.
You're
scared of Bill Gates. You're scared of Bill Gates because you're programmed. You're programmed to be scared of him.
I could kick his ass.
You're programmed to be.
I think I would wipe the fucking floor with him.
Left-wingers.
I'm scared of all his operatives that he pays for and all the bodyguards and protection he can get. Yeah, but him personally, no, I'm not scared of him.
Okay, well, left-wingers are afraid of Elon Musk, and they think Bill Gates is a savior.
No, I'm not afraid of Elon Musk or Bill Gates.
No, what I'm saying is,
I would rather fight Bill Gates than Elon.
I'm saying that your aversion,
I think Elon would be a tougher fight.
Your Bill Gates-ophobia was programmed into you by alt media mind controllers.
I'm not scared of Bill Gates. He's the one that's scared of human competition. So he wants to fucking get rid of people. He wants to lower the population down to a little controllable. He wants to fucking turn everybody into Pat, dude. You remember Pat, the character?
It sounds to me.
From Saturday Night Live?
Sounds to me.
You notice they never bring Pat up. They bring up Saturday Night Live and plenty of different shit, but you'll never hear about Pat.
It sounds to me
what they
like
turn everybody into.
You have
a little freaking can't tell if it's a boy or a girl. Fucking
fire and brimstone. The world's coming to an end. That's all I'm hearing right now.
I never said none of that.
You said the food, the water.
Not one time did I
say
the
food, the water, the Internet of Things,
or fire or brimstone.
Bill Gates is going to turn us all into Pats. That sounds like the end of the world. It sounds like you just described an effective apocalypse.
You don't think they're going towards a Borg type situation? You don't think they're wanting to work towards that? They want to turn everything into the Borg except for a select few to sit over it, dude. And if you can't figure that one out.
I think this is an imaginary hellscape they created for people like you.
And then I guess the border, them completely opening the border to frickin' release criminals and stuff, I guess that's like a straw man too, right?
It's all fear porn, and you're really high on it.
I've been listening to you since forever, dude, for quite a minute now.
Well, look, wait. You've been listening to me, and yet you've been listening to me. You've been listening to me, but you're still scared.
For once, you listen to someone else. I agree with your scripting theories, but the scripting and the programming is to make us go along with this shit and not fight back and accept it.
Interesting take on it. I hope you're satisfied with your fears and your paranoias they gave you, which are the equivalent fears the left has, but that's all it is. It's fear. And I think that's the main part of the programming here. It's
So
fear-based
you're calling
mind
me
control.
left or right. I haven't claimed to be either here,
You're
bro.
on the right side of the political spectrum if you adhere to certain
How am
parameters.
I on the right? You don't know nothing about me, dude.
Okay, the right wing, okay, no.
Aerosol injections, you're claiming I'm a conservative.
No, I'm saying that you're in the MSM plus box. You're on that side. You're on that fringe.
Now I watch the TV media
You don't even have
and
to.
believe it.
It's where you fall into place. Like the reason why you don't believe in climate change is because you're not on the left. You don't accept the premise that capitalism and freedom is destroying the earth.
No, I don't believe in climate change.
Because you're not on the left.
Because they still taught a little bit of science. I'm in my 50s. And they still taught, I'm not a smart guy or nothing, but they still taught a little bit of science. And some of it was like, you know, the past, how they think the earth was. And apparently, if any of their models are correct, when the atmosphere was high in carbon and greenhouse gases, everything was way better.
So would you agree
There was
that
more oxygen.
has the left?
There was more oxygen, more food. They want to, you know, dude, they don't want food growing all over. They want to control it in their little freaking
Are climate change believers dupes then, in your mind? Have they been tricked into being afraid of something?
Definitely.
Is it possible, truly, is it possible that half the population could be tricked into a neo-eschatology and be cowed by that?
What is a neo-eschatology?
Like a new doomsday, a new flood myth, a new end of the world, Gaia's revenge.
Oh, yeah. Like you brought up Al Gore. That motherfucker's a doomsayer. Like, you know, like you said, none of their shits come true, Tim.
Because I recognized this long before I looked at anything else. I looked at how the left is attached to this neo-eschatology, this doomsday that scapegoats the right. And then I realized that
we all agree with you right there, Tim.
But
we all agree with you right there.
Here's the hard part. The hard part...
You have this cutoff that's either programmed, or a lot of us are beginning to think that they're only letting you continue to say what you say because you will not touch these certain subjects. Kind of like Alex Jones, or how you claim he is.
Sure, exactly, actually. But the thing is, it's not enough. It's not enough for them to only...
But don't stop the program, what you know what you're doing. Like I said, your theories on the programming are right on.
I'm just saying
that's waking people up to what I'm saying.
I'm pretty sure that they need uniformity in worldview, and they need everybody on the same sheet with regards to certain aspects.
We definitely need to get off of their ship, like you say, and make our own.
Exactly. And I happen to think, though, that the body of conspiracy theories that supply an alternate explanation for climate change are coming from the same source, whether it's HARP, geoengineering, cloud seeding, stratospheric aerosol injections. I think that's how they sell the right wing on the neo-eschatology that paralyzes the left and gets them both on the same sheet. We both agree that man's destroying the world, but each side blames the other side. And I'm saying both are wrong. That's my point.
Yeah, neither one of them can destroy the world. They can destroy us. They could destroy a bunch of the life. But good luck blowing the whole damn thing up.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's all about exaggerating power.
Even if you blew it up, the gravity would probably hold the chunks together in some.
Right. Okay, well, hey, I appreciate the call and adding your clarification. You know, we're fine-tuning our arguments, and eventually we're going to arrive at the truth.
Good deal, man, because I really, you know, I get caught up on the chemtrail thing, but like I said, a lot of the stuff you say is really right on.
All right, well, I appreciate the call, and have a great day. Thank you.
Oh, one more thing.
Sure.
You ought to bring up, there was an Alex Jones clip that you had brought up before. I believe it was November 27th of last year, where the old man is supposedly holding his granddaughter right after the Israeli incident.
Oh, yeah, is that the rubber doll?
Yeah, dude, that was like the most realist fucking doll I have ever seen, bro. I mean, I've caught a few of the things you know before you even call them out that you've caught, but man, that right there, that is a realistic doll, man. But once people really look at it, especially when he's putting the eyelids up and down, and when the arm slips over the side, or right after he covers the body, the leg, you can just.
Well, I would
it's just
recommend people look into hyper-realistic surgical training dummies. You know, they have ones that bleed, that breathe,
yeah,
that you
dude.
can
They have
intubate.
ones you can do surgery on and shit.
They're so realistic that they're foolproof. And this is the
Yeah.
next iteration. Like, you know, these crisis actors have been dropping the ball, grinning, screwing it up, but that's in the future, the psyops are going to be better and better. So we have to be more discerning moving forward because the visual evidence is going to be harder to discern.
Yeah, dude, and it's really hard to even get people to. I've tried to lead people to that video, and they won't even watch it. You know.
Right. Well, anyway, appreciate the call very much, and I'll probably do a video on these hyper-realistic surgical training dolls because
That would be killer.
they sent so many of those out to to Ukraine, and you know, in the Twin Cities riots after George Floyd was killed, the very first building that was burned,
Sigma.
they burned down Sigma 7, and Sigma 7 had the George Floyd dolls. It's hilarious.
Yeah. That wasn't the only place hit, man. There was places in every town that got hit like that.
Oh yeah, yeah, but that one stood out as especially significant, and that Sigma 7 dolls, it's where I learned, you know, that's where you see that. Now this is very sophisticated, and I have experience with fake dead people. When I was in the Army, I was mortuary affairs at Fort Lee, Virginia. We had an entire warehouse full of dummies that were simulated, that they bent in the right places, so you had to learn how to lift up dead bodies and move them around. So yeah, it's way more developed than it was then, and back then they were indistinguishable.
You put the dummy together over there, like with the grandpa and the granddaughter, and then the CNN and everybody being embedded like days before that shit happened. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, there's a long history of decoys. I recommend people look up the inflatable tanks of World War II and how they've
Oh, yeah,
always
no.
used. And people think, oh, they tricked the Germans. No. The inflatable tanks were to create propaganda to trick both sides. They use decoys for everything. Now it's CGI.
Yeah, I think they might have even been doing that as far back as World War One.
Yeah, was it William Randolph Hearst?
Well, hell, they did decoys way back in ancient times, but I think as far as the militarized blow-ups, I think in World War One they used like balsa wood or something.
Good point. This is the art of war. It's always been deception, and I think that these days they can do a lot with augmented virtual reality and just complete CGI. They don't even have to bring out props anymore.
A lot of people think it's all just fake now. I know some people that just think all of it, everything is completely staged now except for our own little independent lives.
Interesting. I think that's a step forward. It may not be a perfect assessment, but it's better than being automatically plugged into everything like it's real, because then you overreact.
One of them is really smart, works in an industry, I won't mention what it is, but an industry that takes a lot of school and a lot of skill and a lot more smarts than I have, and they've been around some things and seen some, and they think everything is staged. Everything we see on the news, anything political or war, anything to do outside of our own little personal regular lives and interactions.
That's a safe bet. It really is, because there's a point where you can trust the news. You can trust a liar a lot of the time when it's things that they don't have anything to gain from lying to you, like directions to some place or dates. But when it comes to these fabricated events, that's where the role of media becomes an inversion. Instead of reporting, they're producing.
That one thing that convinces me that it's all rigged is you never hear the left or right use the really good arguments or the really good proof. Like you never see the right wing with a compilation of all the claims Al Gore has made over the years. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it would be
that's
so easy for them to do, but they're not going to do it because that would actually work.
yeah. There's this policy. I realized that, and this was after 2012. I started to note that, wait, here seems like that the left and the right don't attack each other's psyops, but just the narratives. So they never go after what would truly undermine it. And that's when I stopped paying attention to people like James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, because if his objective is to destroy the liberal media, He would expose psyops and crisis actors and scripting, but they never go there. And that's because their
Yeah.
job is to maintain the illusion.
Yeah, and people don't think people would do things like that, but man, people can be talked into some weird shit.
Right, right. Exactly.
I lived in Hawaii and seen people just, I don't know, man, just be bought, you know what I mean? For barely nothing because of good speeches and good talking.
Well, I put out an ad for crisis actors once just to see if we offer some money, will people happily lie to the camera? And there were so many responses, and I was only offering $50 a day. So there's a lot of out of work actors who will literally do anything for money. And so like you take that into account, it all makes sense. And you see the dupers delight on the faces, and it's easy to know who's in the know. But yeah, a lot of this is driven by greed, by money, and by the fact that people
And
lie all the time.
and idealism, misguided idealism.
You know, that's a great point too, because I often wonder, how would you get someone to participate in something atrocious like let's fake killing a bunch of kids to score political points against the right? Well, they probably believe that, you know what, by faking this and taking the guns.
Yeah, they think they're stopping the evil
Yes,
right, and they don't
exactly.
even know what the mindset is in that community, really.
It would be so easy to get liberals to go along with big lies as a justification for a greater good. That's not new at
You're
all.
dead on it there. I know that one for a fact. I was until I moved to Hawaii and worked around some of the more elitist, rich left-wingers and seen how they did. And yeah.
Yeah, it's the end justifies the means. But well, hey, I appreciate the call, and again, call back anytime.
All right. Hey, you have a good one, man.
Likewise. All right, couple of great calls here, back to back, just talking about what's happening. And yeah, I say left and right in broad terms because I'm talking about the schism. But this left-right political division, Democrat, Republican, based on platforms and loyalty to party, that's actually entirely separate. But this basic division is there, and it's mostly alchemy. Black, white, male, female, active, passive. These are ways of describing approaches and relationships to really to government and to power. The left wing, the left side, or those who gravitate that way towards woke town, they love government. Government is savior. They're not with the religion. Religion is more on the right, traditional values, and they're more opposed to government. Conservatism, based on limited government principles. The government that governs best governs least, Ronald Reagan type stuff. But this division between the two sides, one leans towards nostalgia, the idealized past, make America great again like it once was before the liberals. And then liberals are like progressive utopianism, let's move into the future, great reset, start over from scratch, revolution. So they create this perfect schism. And the left wing is like, welcome aliens, whether you're from Africa, Mexico, or Mars. They're all for the invasion. They're all for open borders, and this is part of their general relationship to government. They believe that their skin should be open and porous as well. That's why they're the pro-vax side, because they're about collectivizing, getting everybody uniform. One worldism, globalism, etc. And the right gravitates towards nationalism, preserving what works. Build the wall. Space Force to keep the aliens out because aliens are demons. Their skin is an impenetrable border. The left wing is like, get rid of the guns. While the right wing is like, well, you have to defend your house and your property. So one side is open borders, psychologically, physically, in every sense. And the other side is closed in every sense. So you have open, closed. This is a perfect dialectic that they've set up to manipulate the masses. You see, the right wing is like, they're going to take our guns. And the left wing, they're going to regulate our wombs. So you have the feminists and then the toxic masculinity. And feminism is toxic femininity. So you have the extremes, these caricatures. And if you look at the Freudian symbolism here, they're going to grab our wombs. They're going to regulate our wombs. They're going to regulate our guns, take our guns. Well, gun, obvious masculine symbol, active versus the womb. and each one wants to regulate the other side. You see how that works? The left wants to go after the guns, the right wants to go after abortion and female bodily autonomy. Well, this is, again, it's all subconscious. It's at a very deep level. They're trying to tap into insecurities. They're going to castrate you. These are all narratives. But this division down the middle places people by default onto the sides. There isn't really a middle. The people who aren't paying attention, who may not know they have an ideology or know that they have taken sides, will pretty much be revealed to be on a side when prodded with certain questions and interpretations. The climate change one is one of the biggest dividers. If you accept the premise of climate change, you've accepted an argument rooted in anti-capitalism, anti-free market, scapegoating free market and free enterprise as the cause of the world's destruction, the carbon footprint. The right tends to reject that. But that's a perfect dividing line, because if you accept it, you accept the neo-priesthood, the priesthood of scientism and their claims. But it essentially is a doomsday prophecy that never comes true. But this division is so perfect that you will not find a conservative or a right-winger or a conspiracy theorist that believes that man causes the climate to change. But they will believe that secret government projects achieve the same thing. And my argument here is that I just don't see any change at all. I think both sides have been cajoled into accepting a premise that ultimately says man needs to be regulated. I have some diagrams, and I'm going to put out another ebook to explain or to really delineate how this thing works, because we're talking about worldview, and this is collective. Collectively, what do we agree upon? Well, if we're all processed through the same screen, we all agree upon certain things. And it's not just the news, because most people don't watch the news. They barely pay attention. It's everything. It's the movies, the books, the video games, everything that reinforces the consensus agreed upon worldview. And there is one. There is an agreed upon worldview. And the people who disagree with it are, we're talking about like the big picture. They generally just disagree on the details within without rejecting the entire claim. With the exception of, I guess, flat earthers and auto hoaxers. Until recently, though, it's been very uniform. Until the last 10 years, no conspiracy theorist would have had a full assessment to know the truth. The truth about the depths of fakery, how much of this is simulation. Okay, let me continue on your comments. Diana South says McDonald's, food of the gods. Yeah, I'm starting the rumor that McDonald's contains life extension so that this corporation can get the most money out of you. They want you to live long enough to consume and consume and consume. They're not really trying to kill you. Okay, I'm going to catch up on, we talked about Milo. We'll follow up on that. Michael Flynn Jr., he said, in response to Trump, because Donald Trump misspoke. Donald Trump spoke at Mar-a-Lago today, and he said nobody died on January 6th. He accidentally told the truth, but it's pretty clear he misspoke. Trump said nobody was killed on January 6th. That's getting some traction, although he didn't mean it. Well, Michael Flynn Jr. said, there's no conspiracy here, folks. Trump misspoke. Ashley Babbitt was shot and killed on Jan 6. Her mother, who I know, would agree. End of story. I said, shut up, traitor. Ashley Babbitt's not dead. That was a squib, not real blood. Look up Woo's News. There are still people out there, a lot of people out there, who don't know the level of fakery. They still think that January 6th was a stimulated riot. So there's stimulated and there's simulated. Stimulated means they were FBI agent provocateurs making people do things. So it's a real riot, but it wasn't Trump's fault, it was the feds. That's the right-wing interpretation. It was stimulated. The truth of it is, it was simulated. entirely, A to Z. Nobody died, nobody cried. It was simulated. The line that the feds caused it is what I would call a guardrail. It's the alternate explanation that prevents you from arriving at the truth. All right, I'm going through your comments. Hark says, yeah, the Joe Rogan Fear Factor thing, I heard about that on his comedy show. I don't really listen to Joe Rogan enough to make any real judgments. I've heard his podcast. I think he does some pretty decent interviews at times, but he's mainstream media. I don't have time for commentary from mainstream mediated minds except to understand what is being propagated. But he believes in moon landings, and he's a what I'd call media fundamentalist. They don't know about the fakery, or if they know, they're not allowed to tell. So he's not a source for anything. I checked out his comedy show just to see, what is considered to be edgy or funny, and I can understand, I think, why some people laugh. At some points he delivers a lot of jokes. Like, yeah, he's a comedian, he's a working comedian. I don't have any problem with it. I never held him to a higher standard or anything, just because he's friends with Alex Jones. But I will say that a lot of his jokes were centered around body fluids, like a lot of them. I guess that passes for humor in Normiville. Echo Charlie says, I just watched Ace Ventura, which has an elite athlete that transgendered, in case one missed the Jenner show. Jim Carrey, another JC. Yeah, Jim Carrey is one of the actors that is a great study if you want to look at the meta script and meta scripted actors. And what I mean is these actors who play roles on the world stage and in the movies that are congruent and continuous, even though they're separate movies. And there are movies that contain very deep subtext. The Truman Show is a great example of it. Unless you're a conspiracy theorist who's been deep into these rabbit trails, or you're initiated Freemason, or some kind of Thelemite occultist, you might not know what the Truman Show is about. You would have to know the significance of the dog star and the two pillars and the dog itself, what the meaning of, in Ace Ventura, he's hunting a dog. In the number 23, I think he's a dog catcher. And again, getting into it, there's a subtext that would presuppose you had some insider information that the average ticket buyer wouldn't have. So I started looking at Jim Carrey's movies and noticing this trend, and then I picked up the same thing with pretty much every other A-lister actor. All these big movie stars are more than the sum of their roles. They are generally used to carry archetypes that have a deeper significance, because just as religions have the esoteric, which is the insider view, and then they have the outside view, the exoteric, the uninitiated spin, it's the same with movies. There's layers of meaning. What's been most interesting in the last few years has been to observe how a lot of movies that have predictive programming for like 9/11 that we've talked about for a long time also contain predictive programming for 2020 and Donald Trump. In other words, you wouldn't even get the full meaning of the movie until years later anyway. You could watch Stanley Kubrick's The Shining when it came out and say, wait, did Stanley Kubrick fake the moon landing? But after 2001, you'd be able to say, wait, did Stanley have a role in scripting 9/11? Then 2020, did Stanley Kubrick have a role in scripting COVID? And down the line, there's a number of movies like this where it contains predictive programming for things that haven't happened yet, and just because you catch one particular event in one of these things, you may not have decoded the entire movie. And when you look at the directors, it's very telling. Like Donnie Darko is a classic example of this, and the director of Donnie Darko is the son of a NASA employee. And what is NASA but a movie company? Yeah, they do a lot, but ultimately outer space is a movie. The space program is a movie. It's a movie superimposed over reality. Contemporary myths. Tomanoid 3 says, I'm a bit late. I spotted another 113 in train to Busan Peninsula. 2020 Korean zombie movie. 113 license plate before UN rescue to the New World. Now, the number 113 is significant in many Pixar films. It refers to Directive 113 in Wall-E, which has 113 encoded into the name if you look at the logo. 113 and 311. These are numbers that are consistently throughout various psyops associated with, I guess you would say, lockdown. That's what Wall-E was about, lockdown. It's like the Wall-E movie. If you haven't seen it, it's Pixar. It's a future where the Earth is destroyed by climate change and covered in junk. So man has to go into a spaceship, like a space ark, in order to survive. And in Noah's Ark, they're out in the water until God sends a signal, a dove with a branch, the olive branch. It's like, hey, look, it's cool to go back. In Wall-E, they're up there in space until this robot, which looks like a dove, goes down and finds a plant and brings it back. Okay, it's safe to go back down to the Earth. But they left the Earth after Directive 113 was announced. By the way, the One World Trade Tower that replaced the Twins opened on 113, 2014, 13 years after 9/11. Challenger exploded at 1 minute 13 seconds. Space Shuttle Columbia was the 113th shuttle launch. It exploded. I mean, there are patterns that we've picked up on here. Now, in Wall-E, the olive branch is connected to the plant that the little robot called Eve finds. There's so many other examples as well. Good question, Hark says, what's the deal with predictive programming? Is it required for disclosure to build an ethos for a particular agenda or something else or both? The explanation for the longest time has been they have to tell us. Karmic reasons, disclosure. No, predictive programming is best understood, in my opinion here, as a form of advertising. As a form of advertising and conditioning, both for the event to come and your response to it, the narratives that will be attached to it. In other words, they're boring neural pathways. So you're already doing or experiencing this future event in a drill mentally. So predictive programming is putting things into the realm of possibility that do not belong there, so that when they pull it off, it seems reasonable. Like, for example, you had years and years of movies with terror attacks, planes hitting the building. You had this build-up, lots of jet fuel. Like, jet fuel never got an Emmy Award or a Grammy or whatever, an Oscar. Give jet fuel an Oscar. How many action movies in the 80s and 90s were built around exploding planes and jet fuel and just fire? And I think this made it more believable to see the planes hitting the building and the buildings melting. The movie Independence Day came out before 9/11, and a lot of people said, hey, the buildings falling after they were hit by aliens was like Independence Day. So they use it to build your frame of reference. It's a fact with advertising, it's mostly a matter of repetition. They advertise something to you 50 times, you're going to buy it. You were pre-sold on quarantine and fear of the unvaccinated for decades with zombie movies. The Walking Dead. What do you think The Walking Dead was about? The Walking Dead is a movie about quarantining. That's mainly it. You got to quarantine against all those people. And leading up to the day before they pull off any big event, that's when the programming is most intense. That's where you will watch a movie or see a movie poster that pertains to the news that's about to happen. And that's where it goes past what we call predictive and into concurrent programming. Like, for example, with the Trump thing, you open up the Atlantic, you see this image of this bloody Trump head with a clipped ear. And you go to the movies and you see thine ears shall bleed, and it's this bleeding ear. You watch a trailer for Captain America and somebody shoots at the president and he falls to the ground and barely survives. Then you turn on the news and you see Trump getting shot through the ear, gets knocked over, and his ear bleeds. It's concurrent programming that aligns with it. And what they're doing is this, though. They are synchronizing the entertainment which targets your subconscious they're synchronizing that with the news that targets your conscious mind. So the synchronization of the two is what I call, or what is entrainment. They're entraining you to future news cycles. They're entraining you to propaganda. I think this was revealed by Stanley Kubrick in 2001: A Space Odyssey with the eclipse, the sun and the moon. The sun representing the conscious mind, the moon, the subconscious. And the moon, the subconscious, the dreaming mind associated with movies, the movie realm, entertainment, fiction, the dream world. And what they have done, and I think the 2001 symbolizes this, the 2 into 1, is they have merged these two worlds. They have programmed us with a dream version, a simulation, an augmented reality, and they've merged that with the real world by controlling entertainment and news from a single centralized worldview monopoly. So there's no separation, there's no meaningful distinction to be made between Hollywood and the news. It's monolithic. It's the new monotheism. It's a worldview monopoly. Kevin Mooring says the first Joker had unrest and masks on everyone. Oh yeah, the predictive programming in the Joker movie, 2019. They all put on the masks, and if you read, okay, there's quite a lot you can read into these movies because the Joker and Batman movies have been used for years to mirror and predict and reinforce the existing political tensions. Joker symbolizes the left, the disenfranchised, the oppressed in a Marxist class warfare structure, and Batman represents fascism, the right, the Proud Boys, Patriot Front, whereas Joker is like Antifa. So you have the left-right dialectic encoded into these movies. In fact, when Batman came out on March 4th, 2022, I was like, look, March 4th, right-wing terrorists, that's going to be the message. And that was the message. The Riddler was Q, sending his online radicals to interrupt the election. And if you remember, he sent out his online radicals to blow up a dam. Gotham was underwater on 11/6. So 11/6, Gotham underwater, they flooded the polls. Do you know what the midterm GOP slogan was? Flood the polls. So flood the polls literally get flooded in the movie. So the movie presents a more intense but fictional version of the real world events. Another good example, of course, is the Roe v. Wade leak. Feminists are marching because Roe v. Wade leak. They're going to take away the right to bodily autonomy. And then you turn on Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and the opening scene is a forced childbirth, and the queen dies because she's a broodmare for the state. And it's barbaric, and it's bloody, and it's like, wait, this is what the Republicans want to do to us? This is all reinforcement. So again, just to answer that question, for too long, predictive programming has been misinterpreted as some kind of disclosure, but no, it's actually advertising. It's conditioning, and it's filling up your imagination to be acted upon later. And recency plays a huge role in recall. I saw this interesting conversation with a psychologist talking about memory, and what she said in this interview was that she could have people in her room, and she could ask them about Disneyland and get them to include characters that weren't there in their recollection, because she had this poster that had Disneyland, but it also mixed in Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd. It mixed in Warner Brothers characters with Disney. And she found that without even drawing attention to it, people in the room, when asked about their visits to Disneyland, would include Warner Brother characters in their memories. And she would ask them, oh, do you remember hugging Bugs Bunny? And they would describe the tail, they would describe the carrot. And she said it's because when they're recalling, the mind is open and susceptible to suggestion. And just having the poster there would get people to add in characters that weren't even there. So think about all the movies you're watching. Like you're up at night, 10, 6, 20, 23. You're playing Modern Warfare 3 online with millions of other people in this simulated environment. You're all playing this war game. Next morning, oh, you have the attack on Israel, 10/7. So you have this seamless transition from immersion in a video game war to looking at war on TV, and most of the clips being shared on TikTok and Twitter for all these recent wars have been from video games. Didn't you see that study or that article? It was like, I don't know how many, maybe it was like 30,000 of the most popular Ukraine war vids were actually from video games. Let's see if I can find that article here. It's an interesting phenomenon because not only can people not tell real from fake, but people will throw fake info to support their side. Shamelessly. Osher has gifted 5 memberships, 5 new blue wrenches. Jane Smith, Queen Diamond B, Alyssa J, Matthew Nixon, Leanis Eshmon, all have blue wrenches. Thank you. Yeah, Harks, flood the polls. 11/6. I can provide, okay, more examples. So that it comes out on March 4th. We're talking about the Batman movie. Batman comes out March 4th, 2022. On that same day, the Joker, as in the Boston bomber, Dzhokhar Sarnath, they called him the Joker, had his death penalty reinstated. So on the day Batman comes out, the Joker has his death penalty reinstated. And if you go back to the Boston bombing, there were connections between the Christopher Nolan Batman movies and that event, just as there were with others. So he says, is this, commenter again, Hark says, is this neurolinguistic programming, Dan Brown type stuff? Yeah, it's all of that. It's all of the most sophisticated marketing techniques being used in a non-stop propaganda war. It's worldview formation. It's the most sophisticated religion that has ever been devised, and it is a religion. Mainstream media is the de facto state church. And if you believe everything, like literally, fundamentally off the screen, you have entered into what I would consider to be a religious paradigm. The world's going to end. Nukes exist. Well, the nuke is a God construct. Climate change, God construct. Angry flood God. They give you these God constructs to make you controllable. We live in the village. We live in the Truman Show. Kevin Mooring says there's a comic Batman book where Batman is shot and his ear comes on. Let me take a look. What is the Batman comic where he gets shot in the ear? I think I can find it. It might be in the Killing Joke edition. Now we can add a few other things here. The Batman Joker stuff. For example, on 4/4/2023, Trump is arraigned. He's being arrested out there in Manhattan. And out in front of the courthouse, they're filming Joker 2. So you have Joker 2 outside where Trump is. On 4/4, that was actually the 44th birthday, posthumous, of Heath Ledger. So on 4/4/2023, Heath Ledger, the other Joker, the previous Joker, turned 44. Joker 2 is being filmed. The new Joker, the replacement Joker, happens to be named Phoenix, which refers to like a resurrection theme. Then we go forward to this last Trump event, and who's outside but Robert De Niro? And what does Robert De Niro have to do with Joker? He's in Joker. Joker kills him on live TV. And when I saw that, I'm like, wait, this is another example of where they merge the fantasy with the real world. So Robert De Niro showing up outside of the courthouse not only brings up Joker, but it brings up his previous roles. Turns out Joker is based on Taxi Driver. Taxi Driver has Robert De Niro as the assassin. So you have this connection coming up here to this incoming assassination attempt that we were talking about back when Robert De Niro was out there in front of the courthouse. And it turns out that Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver inspired the guy that shot Reagan and James Brady. John Hinckley Jr. was inspired by De Niro. So it really stood out to me that you have De Niro out here who has played the assassin and the assassinated. And then you add in his role in Machete, where he basically plays Trump, a senator, a xenophobic senator being shot at while he's talking about immigration policy, which is exactly what happened to Trump. So what we have been doing here is noting how predictive programming is systemic. It's not like anomalous examples here and there, eerie coincidences. No, it's in everything. De Niro's character gets killed at the end. Yep. And in Taxi Driver, he's the assassin who inspired a real assassination attack. And it gets much deeper. He did it for Jodie Foster. The story gets much deeper, and I could go into De Niro a little further here. The Joker thing, though, is what I want to stick to. Because as Travis Bickle, he was playing a Joker-esque character. You know, when he decided to do this assassination. But De Niro being out there brought these various roles into play. It brings these associations there. And this is how neurolinguistic programming works. The idea is that you associate certain images or sounds or ideas with certain stimuli or a face or an actor. And this is the idea of MK Ultra. It's about triggering. So you have all these scenes that are programmed into your head. These actors bring it with them. It's like this sort of it adds layers of significance to it. The new Joker comes out on 10/4, by the way. Now, the other event Trump was at, there was somebody outside who set himself on fire. This was on 4/19. There is a Joker connection here as well, and a Batman connection. So on 4/19, Maxwell Azarello. The name Azarello stands out because one of the preeminent authors, writers for DC Comics, Batman, Joker is named Azarello. But this guy sets himself on fire outside the Trump trial on 4/19. The significance there, 4/19 is the anniversary of Oklahoma City, which was blown up in response to Waco. Well, Waco, 4/19, you had a Burning Man. You had Dave Koresh, 33 years old, incinerated by the ATF. So this inspired Timothy McVeigh to blow up Oklahoma City bombing, or the Oklahoma City federal building. I think it was called is it Fred Murrah? But he was then executed at the age of 33 on 6/11/2001. So 4/19 has a lot of significance. You have these two martyrs, the Waco connection, and this guy's outside of the Trump courthouse and sets himself on fire. And at the same time, there's a fire in Copenhagen at the oldest stock exchange, the Spire, which they call the Dragon's Tail. Significance here in all the photography, there's a big Batman DC Comics poster on the outside, which is kind of weird. So many layers to this, but my point here is that the Batman and Joker characters have been tracking with contemporary news and psyops for years, since the Nolan brothers have been a part of this thing. Christopher and Jonathan Nolan are two of the biggest meta-scripters on the world stage right now. Oppenheimer, Fallout, Westworld, and in the Batman Dark Knight Rises, you had some foreshadowing for 2020, but also for the Mushroom Cloud, which was, years before Christopher Nolan did Oppenheimer. Hark said children burned to death too in both OK and Waco. Yeah, according to the official story. Although there are many reasons to look at these things as psyops. You know what's interesting too is that Timothy McVeigh supposedly killed 168 people. That's the number. Tim McVeigh, I think there's a book on him called American Terrorist. But in addition to McVeigh being inspired by the Waco incident, Alex Jones was there, and he was also heavily inspired by that. But anyway, a couple of things about it. Timothy McVeigh killed 168 people. Well, some believe that Tim McVeigh came back as specialist Paul Weissapol. This is a fascinating connection here. Timothy McVeigh, agent Paul Weissapol. So it's believed that this guy is just a Fed. He played a role as a terrorist. Fake died at 33. Plenty of reason to think it's fake. And he came back as this guy named Paul Weissapol. Now, keep in mind the number 168. So he killed 168, right? Well, I'm looking into specialist Paul Weissapol, and he was involved in some kind of rescue operation. And guess how many children Paul Weissapol had saved? Anyone care to guess? Yes, Special Agent Paul Weissapol, in charge of FBI's Tampa division, is credited with having saved or rescued 168 children. So the exact number that McVeigh killed, Paul Weissapol, his new identity saved. It's just kind of, if you ask me, it's concise, it's poetic. A couple of other things. McVeigh executed at 33, inspired by the Turner Diaries. The Turner Diaries, authored by someone born on 9/11, 1933, and had predictive programming for 9/11 style attacks. Tominoid 3 says Dark Knight Returns 1986, Two-Face plants 2 bombs in Gotham's Twin Towers. Kevin Mooring says the Bat started CV. Yeah, the Bat is highly significant. It's sort of a phoenix symbol. The burning bat is one of the things that Christopher Nolan put into his movies. Hark says, what about the Challenger astronauts that had doppelgangers? You know, I think that years ago, like in '86, it may not have been as important to go into deep cover because you didn't have the internet. There was no real fact checking. It was just lies, lies, lies. But you didn't have what we have here. You didn't have media critics. You didn't have media deconstructionists. And you certainly didn't have non-believers at the extent, to the degree that we have today. So they just blatantly, boldly lied and didn't even try too hard a lot of the times. Like people say, these psyops today are so easy to see through, it's so fake. It's like they're trying to wake us up. Like, no, if you go back, you'll see that they've actually improved. They were a lot worse. So there's this fear going around that Biden's going to step down before the end of September in order to make Kamala the president, to give her this, quote, honeymoon going into the election. There are discussions right now, according to Jack Poso's source in the White House, that Biden's going to step down. Now, this would be a problem for Donald Trump's merchandise. He's been selling hats, he's been selling mugs, t-shirts with 47s. So many of his minions and followers have had tattooed 47s on themselves. The guy I'm suing, Marcus Goldfinch, he's a big Trump insider. He bought the domain 47.live. I mean, this is going to screw up Donald Trump's entire merchandise line. I mean, how are you going to fix that? Because now Kamala will be 47. He's got a hat. His hat says 47, 40, 45, 47. That hat is going to be Kamala's. What's going to happen? I want to say thanks to the callers, thanks to the commenters. This has been a very productive talk. We've been on here for 3 hours, 14 minutes. I don't think we've covered everything that I wanted to cover. We got through most of the notes. We talked about Milo Yiannopoulos and Kanye West's laughing gas problem. And apparently, well, we'll see. Apparently, they're going to Michael Jackson Ye West. And right now, there's this hashtag, Save Ye. Save Ye. We talked about the 6 agents that rushed to the podium and gathered around Trump. This was pointed out by Synchromorpheus. And here you have 6 Secret Service agents. Why is this significant? I mean, we looked at these photos. In one shot, it looks like the Marine War Memorial. In another, it's the cover of Braveheart. But another way of looking at it, with the 6 agents around him and his single bloody head poking out above, they have recreated the 7-headed beast out of the sea, the book of Revelation 13, played out on the world stage. Just another scene in this never-ending pageantry, of the world state. And this is contemporary myth building. We talked about season 4, episode 8 of The Boys and Stranger Things, and how they both have the same basic story: the sniper, the shooting scene. Both of them with many connections to Trump or JFK. Roger Stone says that there's an Iranian plot to assassinate Trump, but it's going to be a cover for a deep state plan. We talked a little bit about the witch, Taylor Swift, and ISIS terror threats, shutting down her concerts, and how that may be foreshadowing for whatever they're going to do with her. I'm not quite sure, but they've made an effort to attach Taylor Swift to so many dead female icons, tragic deaths, that something is probably up there. I was informed today that Todd Phillips, who directed Joker, also directed The Hangover, which has some significance for the Vegas event, because Hangover contains predictive programming for Vegas. So we'll look at Todd Phillips and his body of work, how deep he is in the meta-scripting business. Hark says that was a mass trauma event, the Challenger. We watched it live and the teachers were shitting themselves. Oh yeah, and when you look at that event, it's kind of interesting because it's like 19 years later after the Apollo 1 disaster. And the Apollo 1 disaster was used, I think, as an example. It kind of cast a shadow. And this was actually brought up in Fly Me to the Moon, the Apollo 1 sacrifice. But if you look at the dates, it's kind of interesting. It's like 19 years almost to the day. But it seems like there's this pattern where at every major stage of our transition into the space age, we have these fiery immolations, foundational sacrifices. Yuri Gagarin, first man in space, dies a fiery death, mysterious. They couldn't find his body, which has some connections to the Osiris myth. Then you had Apollo 1, again, another one of these immolations. 19 years later, Challenger, immolation, fire. And I've been suggesting that the next step, that before we go to colonizing the moon, we're going to see another immolation. We're going to see the space station go down in flames. That it's just some kind of a, you go from Earth to space, and then from there to the moon, mastering low Earth orbit, and now we're going to colonizing other planets. But before that can happen, the ISS needs to come down in a fiery explosion. And just about a month ago, they've announced that SpaceX is going to bring down the ISS in flames. That SpaceX is being contracted to take down the space station. I think he's getting paid. Here it is. Here, how SpaceX will bring down the ISS. NASA awards SpaceX $843 million to build a craft that will bring it down. NASA taps SpaceX to bring down the ISS. So I had kind of predicted that this would be necessary before the next phase, just based on the pattern. And it is the case that they are indeed going to do it. I just assumed they were going to shoot it down, or Russia was going to shoot it down. We can't rule that out, though. Dirk Zink says, like it or not, this is a religion. It is. Space is the new unifying heaven. And the best thing you can do, in my opinion, is be an atheist to the state religion. Reject all of their God constructs. And many of the arguments that atheists make are valid when applied additionally against the God constructs of the state. All right, today is 8/8/2024. I checked out Trump's speech. Yeah, he said nobody died on January 6th, but that was obviously misspeaking, although many QAnoners are reading into it. Now, I came across this. It doesn't have a lot to do with what we talk about. Jay Anderson, Project Unity, posted it. He said, this experiment demonstrates that a plant may have the ability to collapse quantum probabilities towards the most likely outcomes for its own survival. So in this short experiment, they have this plant in a box, and it seems like in some way the plant may have some kind of apparent agency when it comes to positioning itself where the light's likely to be. It's a short clip.
Unpublished experiment that we did at the Pear Lab, which we called Plant RNG. You have a room with no windows, and you have a house plant that needs light to grow. You have a single growing light up on the roof. The growing light can turn in one of 4 quadrants, and which quadrant that light is showing is controlled by a random number generator. So you put the plant in one corner of the room. The light has an equal chance of shining in all 4 quadrants. But you give it enough time, and what you find is the light actually shines far more often on the plant.
So the light is going to be directed somewhere completely random every time, but somehow, in the aggregate, the plant more often than not finds itself in the light. And what he's suggesting here is that this suggests some kind of agency or self-awareness, or that the plant is collapsing quantum probabilities.
And on the other coordinates, it's as though life itself, even life or consciousness in something as simple as a houseplant, bends probabilities in the physical world in the direction of what it needs, in the direction of its growth and its evolution.
Interesting concept. It just came across my Twitter feed. I mean, it's not always mind junk and spam and clickbait. Occasionally I come across these interesting bits here, but I thought that was kind of notable because we often talk about intention and result. You know, are we living in a static universe, or is there some kind of co-creative capacity innate within us? And if so, that could be a major justification for the mind control that we see, for the synchronization of the mass mind. Maybe it's in some way hijacking our innate capacity to influence outcomes in the direction of our own collective survival. Hark says quantum string theory or some S. Well, you know, you can have new terminology to describe things that may actually be true. I'm not exactly sure. I thought that was interesting for a few reasons, because we often find ourselves discussing, beyond just propaganda and news and entrainment to propaganda, is there some other purpose to harnessing our attention, to harnessing the attention of every sentient being on this planet? And when you look at the subtext to much of the news, it's beyond propaganda. There's obviously elements that you would consider to be, pagan, occult, magic, what they term magic, ritual, etc. And when you look at the various magical philosophies and schools of thought, all of it seems to be focused on this idea that the sentience, that the concentration, the focused attention of the individual has some potential effect on what manifests next, what possibilities are open next. And with this in mind, it's interesting to think about what living in the box does to the realm of possibility. They submerge you in impossibilities, in a false paradigm. I'd like to know, is part of this process perhaps putting a leash or a collar or putting some kind of parameters around will and agency itself? But as far as their terminology and explanations, no, I do not. Mango Penguin says we attract with intention. And that's kind of what I'm suggesting here. And you heard the expression, the attention economy. Like there's a lot of money being invested into harnessing your attention for whatever that means. And if sentience itself has some innate built-in program or purpose to seek after its own survival or to seek better possibilities, if it is intrinsically somehow able to manipulate probabilities, then that's something I would like to know. Because if that's the case, then there's a great deal of surplus just being squandered, or worse, directed to the world stage. All right, this is Chief Crow. Space is fake AF, and I'll put a link below. Subscribe to the newsletter so you don't miss the live stream notifications. And I'll put a link to this track below.
From Earth into the black void.
Because you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
we were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
It's not a black void. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of polka dots.
Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
There's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
you see the gas.
Away from the sun, it's the darkest night you can imagine.
Hey, space boy, you broke my rocket man heart. Where are the stars? Is it bright or is it dark? The vacuum of space, oh, the tomfoolery.
What happens if you get a leak on that? You have a leak.
Debunk my bubble.
It's hard to comprehend.
Space is fake AF.
Two little bitty O-rings.
Space is fake AF.
It's not what you think, homeboy.
Space is fake AF.
It's all just start doing this.
Space is fake AF.
Research Eddie Bravo. You just have a leak, and what you would do is lose air.